Good evening, everybody. At this time, we will reconvene into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School Board of Trustees for October 14th, beginning at 6:58 p.m. Due to health and safety concerns related to the COVID-19 coronavirus, members of the public are encouraged to participate by watching the school board online at www.aisd.net. One or more trustee may participate in this meeting via video conference call. A quorum of the Board of Trustees will be physically present at the administration building. Members of the public may access this meeting via AISD website at www.aisd.net. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Our board meetings are open to the public and we welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in public education. While our meetings are open to the public, this is a meeting and we have business to conduct. Disruptions will not be permitted. Anyone who disrupts the meeting or speaks when others are speaking may be asked to leave or be escorted out by the security attending the meeting. We welcome civic input, but we insist that we remain respectful and civil. Thank you for your cooperation. We will start our meeting with the opening ceremony. Please join Mr. Chapa in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please silence all cell phones and electronic devices to avoid any disruptions around you. And now, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is our program and/or presentation. So this evening we have our students' performance by Arlington High Jazz Ensemble. And you may begin, and I will add comments after we hear this lovely, lovely music.
Great. Hello and good evening, everyone. We are so happy to be here. We got out of marching band rehearsal early to be here, so thank y'all for having us. We love marching band, but we also love the AT. So I'm going to introduce our students here. This is Herminio Meza on alto sax. This is Davis Cook on drum set. Mitchell Mead on bass. We're going to play an original tune for you. I wrote it about 2 weeks ago on a free Saturday that I had, and now it's going to be premiere for the world for the very first time. Hope you enjoy it. It's called Copycat. 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3.
Thank y'all so much, so much. Gosh, I got into that. I thought I was Saturday night, no more job working. I was in Zen zone. Mrs. Foster, if you don't mind coming forward to share some information about the group. A solo by everyone is part of this. Wow. Mr. Hervey, I would like a signed copy. I'll pay for it when your music does come out, but I would like a signed copy.
Sounds good.
The music was very smooth. Thank y'all very much. Mrs.
I will
Foster,
say,
would you
I
like to
think
share?
Mr. Hervey did an excellent job, but one thing that I wanted to make sure that we reiterated is he is the composer of this piece of art with his very talented students, and you can book them for your own event if you would like to. They do award shows, fundraisers, staff meetings. So if you're interested in booking the Arlington High School Jazz Combo, you can just reach out to Mr. Hervey, nhervey at AISD.net, or just call Arlington High School and they'll get you booked. So good job, everybody.
Awesome. Thank y'all very much. Have a good evening. Good job, fellas. It's a nice calming effect. I know. I hired them some assistants. All right, good job once again. So we have additional presentations. Now we're going to have the presentation for the October Student of the Month, who will come from Arlington College and Career High School, Miss Isabel Jimenez. And I would like for Principal Dr. Ben Boland to please come and give us an introduction for our student.
All right, good evening, President Mays, members of the board, and Superintendent Cavazos. Thank you for this opportunity to represent one of the outstanding students in the district. And we're very proud to have our representative from Arlington College and Career High School, Isabel Jimenez. Isabel is currently a sophomore and the youngest of 3 siblings. She was born in Puerto Rico and previously attended Gunn Junior High. And it was at Gunn Junior High she applied and decided she wanted to attend ACCHS for the opportunity to earn both her high school diploma and her associate's degree, and she's well on her way. Isabel has set very high goals for herself. In the future, she wants to attend an Ivy League school and major in her favorite subject, which I'm very excited to hear about, mathematics. After acquiring her bachelor's degree, she would like to work as an actuary, and I was trying to recruit her to work for accountability and testing perhaps one day here, and I know Dr. Lopez is here, so we could maybe set up an interview at some point. Isabel's teacher selected her for this honor, and here are a few things they had to say about her. And I talked to Isabel a little bit, and out of all the outstanding students at our campus, she was selected, so it is quite an honor. Isabel continually achieves excellence in the classroom. During last year's hybrid learning, Isabel distinguished herself as a responsible and committed student. She was always on time to Zoom meetings, kept her camera on, and showed her engagement and asked great questions just as often as she participated in the general class discussion. Now that we're back in person, Isabel has shown the same level of excellence. She coaches her peers in English by helping other students with their grammar. Since she's so strong in math and usually finishes her assignments early in Algebra 2, she often walks around the room to ask students if they need extra help without being told to do so. She is never critical and always supportive and serves ACCHS as a student council officer. She is ambitious, kind, intelligent, and makes all of us want to be better teachers. Her positive attitude and commitment to excellence make her a model ACCHS student. We see big things in her future. Congratulations, Isabel.
Good evening.
Good evening. Feel free to make any remarks, introduce anyone that's here that you'd like to introduce this evening.
Hello, I'm here with my mom and my cousin today. Thank you so much for this honor of being Student of the Month and for being able to be represented in front of the board. It's a very high honor, and I'm very glad that I got the chance to do this. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations for your hard work. Something that was said that Dr. Bolin read in describing you, I think, is amazing. And that is part of being a leader, is that when people look at you, they gain confidence. And that's what I read from this. So congratulations to you. Congratulations for being Student of the Month for October. And welcome, Mom and Sister. We appreciate y'all coming. If you want to stand there, we will go and take a picture. Okay?
Thank you.
And if you like, we can also get a picture with your mom and your sister after we get one. So this evening, we will be giving her a pen. This pen is a pen that we wear thank you. This is a pen that we wear as trustees and that we give to those who show leadership, who show good judgment, and who represents Arlington ISD, and that would be you. So here is your pen from the trustees. Dr. Cavazos.
And Isabel, thank you so much for representing our students exceptionally well. You demonstrate excellence, and I can tell that by the remarks you made and by what your principal has said. So this is also for you as a special remembrance of this time, and so I congratulate you on behalf of our entire district.
Thank you.
There you go. All right, 1, 2.
Spence, can you grab a picture with her mom? Yeah. Sister, would you like to come in? We'll make sure you get a picture. And you can bring the flowers. Oh, that's sweet.
There you go. 1, 2. Okay, now we do this. Oops, there's Boo's head. Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, next on our agenda is another presentation. That presentation is for our Community Engaged for Excellence Award of Appreciation. Tonight, we will be honoring North Davis Church. Mr. Perales, would you like to come forward and share some information?
President Mays, Superintendent Cavazos, members of the board, again, it's always a pleasure and an honor to say thank you to members of our community, a very engaged community that sit alongside us and help us achieve the work that we have, that is educating our students. And we are very blessed in our community to have members of civic organizations, institutions of higher learning alongside with us, business, and faith-based organizations. And today, we get to recognize a faith-based organization that has been truly exceptionally engaged with our district. So, the congregation of North Davis Church of Christ has a focus to be a missional presence in our community. In doing so, they share their time and their talents with our Arlington ISD students, staff, and families. For the past 8 years, North Davis Church has supported our AISD Back to School Kickoff by providing event support volunteers from their congregation. They're volunteers that performed a variety of roles for the event as they work alongside our larger event volunteer base. However, for the 2021 AISD Back to School Kickoff, North Davis Church of Christ provided leadership as the coordinating church in charge of distributing nearly 10,000 backpacks to our students and families. Working on the kickoff planning committee throughout the 2021 school year, North Davis Church of Christ collaborated with Fielder Church to provide a seamless transition of leadership for the backpack distribution portion of the event. When called upon to take on this new role, Children's and Family Minister Summer Morris organized a team that stepped up to the plate to ensure we could continue to provide a positive experience for our students and families for the event. Now at the campus level, North Davis Church provides support to students and staff at Wimbish World Language Academy by supporting campus beautification projects, teacher appreciation events, pouring into our students and families in most need. North Davis Church actively forges relationships with our campuses in North Arlington, researching ways to engage and provide support. In addition, they actively engage with local churches to provide the Serve Arlington initiative. Now, Minister Jeff Hubbard always reaches out to me and says, Aaron, how can we support? It's not uncommon for him to shoot me a text or give me a phone call and say, hey, we hear this is going on, how can we help? And they always answer the call. And it truly is an honor to recognize North Davis Church of Christ this evening. Minister Hubbard.
It's an honor to get to stand before you as a representative, not only of our church, but also of our Children's and Family Minister, Summer Morris, who does the vast majority of organization and logistics. She couldn't be here tonight. She is doing research on children and fun at Disney World. And so so I get to do this in her stead. But we're thankful for the partnership. As a father of 3 girls in AISD, I know just what great work not only this board is doing, but also teachers and staff that you guys represent. And so we're thankful for each one of you, and we're thankful for our partnership. And so thank you for this honor.
Congratulations. Dr. Cavazos and I are going to come down and take a picture. We appreciate everything y'all do, and the partnerships that we have in the community is so important. And to be able to pick up that phone and know that you're there for what you're putting into our students at Wimbish Academy, we just appreciate everything that you do in the community.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next on our agenda are appointments. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mays, and I'd like to recommend that the board ratify the appointments of the individuals discussed in closed session for the following positions: Executive Director of Engagement, Equity, and Access, Principal for Crow Leadership Academy, Principal for Johns Elementary, Assistant Principal for Lamar High School, Assistant Principal for Sam Houston High School, Assistant Principal for Workman Junior High, and Assistant Principal for McNutt Elementary.
Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, President Mays. At this time, I move that we ratify the administrative appointments discussed in closed session.
Okay, do I have a second? I second. Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Chapa, a second by Mr. Wilbanks. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Okay, so we do have our quorum this evening. Miss Melody, can you hear me? Mrs. Fowler?
Yes.
Okay.
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Okay. Yes,
Doesn't matter.
there you go.
There we go. Aaron Reich, vote yes. David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes in the affirmative, all unanimous.
Thank you, President Mays. And so, as our custom, we're going to introduce, and you'll see them, their picture and their background on the screen here. I'll start with Aaron Perales, is our new Executive Director for Engagement, Equity, and Access. So how timely, so congratulations to Aaron. I will mention that he attended the University of Texas at Austin. Okay, I'll mention that. And obtained his Bachelor of Arts in English, so, and UT Arlington for Master of Ed in Ed Administration. Congratulations, Aaron, on this promotion. You see his other experiences there. And remember, when we ratify, or when the board ratifies, they've already started the work. So these individuals are well on the way. Congratulations, Aaron. Next is the principal for Crow Leadership Academy, Liznell Gonzalez Morales. And Liznell was previously the assistant principal at Crow, has been a testing facilitator at Webb Elementary, and you see her previous experience there. Congratulations to Liznell on her promotion to be the Crow Leadership Academy principal. Next, the principal for Johns Elementary is Grecia Lopez. And Grecia was most recently the assistant principal at Johns Elementary, has also been a testing facilitator and a bilingual teacher. You see her background there. Congratulations to both Grecia and Liznell. They're part of our leadership staff and the individuals who are growing in their leadership and now assuming new positions. Next is the assistant principal for Lamar High School, is Miral Kawazmi. Miral is coming to us from Grapevine Colleyville, and she is the new assistant principal at Lamar High School. And just for the record, she attended Texas A&M University. So just to be fair to everyone, I'll point that out. But you can see the rest of her experience as a teacher and others. Next, I'll introduce the assistant principal for Sam Houston High School, Dr. Michael Buckley. And Dr. Buckley has been with us before, most recently as an assistant principal at Martin High School, but has also worked in Cleveland ISD as a coordinator for SEL and has a variety of experiences there. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Buckley, and welcome back. Dr. Buckley now is an assistant principal at Sam Houston High School. Next, an assistant principal at Workman Junior High is Maria Luna. And Maria most recently was the assistant principal at Webb Elementary. And you see that she has had a variety of experiences with bilingual, as a bilingual educator, and has served as an assistant principal, like I mentioned, and now will be moving to the junior high level at Workman Junior High. Next, the assistant principal for McNutt Elementary is Doris Campbell. And Doris most recently was the instructional specialist at the World Languages Academy, or World Languages Department, I should say, has been an instructional coach and a third grade bilingual teacher, has a variety of experiences. Congratulations to Doris. And that concludes the appointments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavazos. Next on the agenda is a public hearing, and we do not have one tonight. So we will go to our open forum for agenda items. So as stated on the posted agenda, members of the public who desire to address the board regarding an item on this agenda are required to register at www.aisd.net/board-meeting-speakers-request no later than 3 p.m. the day of the board meeting. Mrs. Benjamin, do we have any requesters registered to address the board regarding agenda items?
Yes, ma'am, we have 6 registered for this portion of the meeting.
Okay, so I will read this for each 6, and so I don't have to repeat it each time. This is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings. This segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to share their views with the trustees on items that are on the agenda tonight. It is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. Personnel matters are not appropriate subjects for open forum. You will have 2 minutes to speak. Mrs. Benjamin will notify you when your time is up, and please end your presentation at that time. So I will call your name, and when I do, please come up to the stand. So the first name that I have is Cece Evans. Is Cece here? Okay, then I will move to the next name. And I apologize if I mispronounce this. Cindy Kalaluka. You may start.
Good evening, Superintendent Cavazos, President Mays, school board members, and everyone present in person or virtually. I'm back, urging you to keep it simple. So I'll do the same thing. Childhood should be a journey, an incredible journey, not a race. Learning should be joyful, not tedious. Right now, neither one is true. We are in crisis and on survival mode. Many things are mandated and not in your control. 3 things that are in your control that would help are, number 1, revise and extremely simplify the report cards so they're understandable and useful to parents. Number 2, use all available personnel for instructional support in kindergarten through 2nd grade, such as leveled literacy intervention and tutoring, in order to meet the students where they are and accelerate their learning, instead of waiting until they're years behind and have given up on themselves. Number 3, take anything that is not absolutely essential, as in mandated, off of teachers' plates, so we can focus on the formative assessments and the appropriate instruction for all of our students. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to making AISD an amazing school district. And keep it simple, please. Please keep it simple.
Okay, next we have Robert Bucher. Robert, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Last time I spoke, I talked about the $1 million bond. In the wake of recent events, we should revisit to implement more security measures, as promised by those who are on the board. Within the recent fights that I have came across from different teachers in this district that have came to me and talked to me about that, they're not only necessary, but they feel like it's deserved that the children of not just Tarrant County, but Arlington ISD, specifically tonight, feel like they need to come to school feeling safe from physical, mental, and emotional harm. We, the people and parents, make the health decision for our children instead of continuous talks about mask mandates and unnecessary lawsuits, which takes away from the fact that security is being ignored. Where are the metal detectors? Where are the security ones that was promised? So instead of worrying about frivolous lawsuits that will end up in school board losing along with other school boards losing due to unconstitutional implications, let's look at more secure measures. Spend the money that way. Look, there have been way too many fights here lately in Arlington ISD. As I will end with this, the fact that RJ Construction went out of their way to make sure these kids had come back to learning as quick as possible, the lack of respect was shown by not wanting to pay RJ Construction, which is absolutely disgusting.
Robert,
RJ Construction went out of their way and came to.
Robert,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, that's not on the agenda, so we can't discuss that at this time.
Can you discuss it at the end?
No.
Like the open?
No. Oh, at the end, yes.
Yeah.
For non-agenda items, if you're registered.
I should be. I believe so, because I put that slash the other part. So if I can,
Yes,
I can do
ma'am.
that, I'll do that there.
Yes.
Mr. Bucher registered to speak regarding mask, open discussion, previous bonds. but also listed lawsuits. So because mask and safety was included, that was part of the, this part of the meeting.
Okay. So can you continue his time? Okay. Yes, continue his time. Okay, Robert,
Do you mean, can I continue on with the
you
RJ one or
can.
not?
Your time will go back.
RJ Construction, who came to the rescue of Arlington ISD when they could have been doing anything else and dealing with all the other things that were going on during COVID-19. RJ Construction came to the rescue, and y'all refused to pay this company, and this guy came and did everything he could to make sure these kids get a quality education and come back to school in a timely manner, so that way they didn't have to lose more summertime days. So somebody had to monitor RJ throughout the night, make sure they're secure and safe. So somebody had to know they were here, so there's no excuses to not know that what he was doing here and while it was happening. And there is no immunity for any non-governmental immunity. And I just want to say that the lack of wanting to pay these individuals is really disgusting, and it speaks a lot of character. And honestly, just based on that and then the mask mandates, I would ask for y'all to step down and let's get some people in there that's going to do right.
Okay, so the next speaker we have is Megan Plumley. Megan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we can hear you. You can start now.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk about, I know that y'all have said that a virtual option for 7th through 12th is not on the table right now, but I would like to urge that y'all look into it, or at least have some sort of emergency plan in place, because what I'm seeing as a Martin High student is that mental health is lacking, attendance is lacking, motivation is lacking. And I can tell that from students and teachers, because attendance is lacking, because people are afraid that they're going to get COVID. They don't have the motivation to come to school, and we don't have the allowance to quarantine whenever you're in close contact. The only time that you can quarantine and get excused is if you have that positive test. And a lot of people are anxious because of the pandemic and the growth of fear and paranoia whenever you're in these crowded spaces. And for student motivation, I find that a lot of my fellow students and classmates, they all found that they excelled in online school. So I wish that there was an option for online due to the struggle that my classmates are suffering from in the transfer from completely online to completely in person. I understand that it's not on the table right now, but I really wish y'all would look into it for the sake of your older students, because we feel ignored. I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have R. Rogers.
Good evening. I want to start by thanking a few representatives that have continued to stand up for constitutional rights and students' choice. Over the last year, I have seen the school district that was once appeared to be exemplary do a 180-degree flip. It seems that maybe AISD hasn't been exemplary all along. What used to be a district that was focused on the growth and choice of students have become a restrictive district who only wants to push a mainstream narrative and go on to get along. Instead of being a leader, most of the leaders in the district are attempting to follow the crowd. A few of the things that we have witnessed this year, we have evidence of CRT and SLE being funneled into our curriculums. The district spent a year and a half locking down our schools and impacting student learning. The district conjoining efforts with Tarrant County official and Vinnie Tanasia, who is not a doctor, to host vaccine efforts using our taxpayer funds. We have seen multiple attempts to mask up our children, going as far as to try to override Abbott's orders. Although for the time being, you have currently halted the masking efforts, we have teachers in our schools attempting to guilt children and students into masking up. The school board has repeatedly not followed the students' first policy for all, but has played games, attempted to go along to get along, and push agendas. Recently, DISD has attempted to pay students ages 12 and older $50 to receive a vaccine. This is a bribery at its finest. A vaccine that is still experimental and proven unsafe and harmful to one's health. It is actually safer to catch the actual virus than taking a vaccine, up to 13 times more effective according to recent studies out of Israel. I just passed that to you. If a district can't afford to pay RJ Construction, a contractor that has done nothing but good for the community, has supported many AISD programs and came to the aid of AISD in time of severe emergency, and you are using loopholes to not pay for services rendered, then you don't need to be using district-funded money to bribe students and teachers to take a vaccine. This is immoral and unethical. I would like to hope that AISD will not follow the narrative and not push these vaccines on others that don't want them. I'm disgusted with the way AISD has played games.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Situations that have
Time
occurred
is
in this
over.
last year and a half.
So our next speaker is Armandina Guerra. Armandina here? Armandina?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear.
I understand.
Okay. Okay, I don't have a speech or anything. I just really want to say that, just want to keep it to hashtag honor the men and women who died in the name of freedom, that leave it to the parents' choice as far as, sending their kids to school, whether they should be masked or not masked. This COVID is turned into a political narrative all over the world and down to the local level. And so I just urge to please think of the parent's choice for their child. We care about our children, and it should be up to us. I understand that the whole thing about the hospitals, that their ICU or whatever is overbooked. Again, this is all a narrative. The sky is falling, people's hairs is on fire, and it's just like Saki, I can't even say her name correctly, the redhead lady in the White House. Nevertheless, talking about how basically let's take advantage of a crisis, and it's just, this is a globalist movement to socialism and communism that they're trying to prepare us for. And if anybody has anything to say, it's going to be parents standing up for their children. Again, I don't have a speech, so I'm just speaking off the cuff here. Please do the honorable thing and pay RJ Construction. Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is an action item, and that is consider a resolution to nominate a candidate of the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mason. The board has the opportunity to nominate a candidate for the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors, and that is an opportunity for the board to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Mr. Hogg?
Thank you, President Mays, and I'd like to come before the board with a motion for nomination. And I'll make a motion, then read it, and let me just say this individual that we're nominating is currently serving on the board for us, on the Tarrant Appraisal Board, and this is the board to oversee the administration. They are not doing the appraisals, but the actual administration of the Tarrant Appraisal Board. He's a former board member, a business owner here in town that has lived here and he's got his final two girls in high school right now, so I'm proud to nominate him. So with that, I move to the board adopt the following resolution, and let me just give me a minute to read this resolution. Whereas the Arlington Independent School District taxing entity has determined its preference for the representatives to the board of the Tarrant Appraisal District. Now therefore be it resolved that the Arlington Independent School District taxing entity does hereby nominate Tony Pompa, 5101 Forest Lake Court, Arlington, Texas 76017, as a member of the board of directors for the Tarrant Appraisal District, and that a copy of this resolution be mailed to Jeff Law, Chief Appraiser, Tarrant Appraisal District, 2500 Handley, Ederville Road, Fort Worth, Texas 76118-6982. This would be passed and approved by the board on the 14th of October 21st. I'm proud to nominate Tony, who served in a very difficult time on the Tarrant Appraisal Board for us. So with that, I move for approval.
Okay. Okay, we've got a first by Mr. Hogg, a second by Mr. Wilbanks. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Roll call, Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, I vote yes. David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, I vote yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Okay, all vote in the affirmative and motion passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is our discussion action item. First item up is consider revision of board policy. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays. And this evening, we bring a slight policy revision to policy EIC. And Dr. Hill will lead us through a brief presentation regarding our request to revise. So, Dr. Hill.
Good evening, President Mays, board members, and Dr. Cavazos. Again, here to bring a brief presentation about policy EIC local and the rationale for this recommendation. Again, administration and TASB recommend an addition to EIC local, and we'll talk about why. The details of the recommendation beginning basically with the graduating class of 2025, that weighted credit be provided for all dual credit classes similar to those for AP and IB courses. And this comes from the administration. And then Texas Association of School Boards recommends that we add a provision to clarify which student receives the highest ranking GPA certificate from the state. TASB wants us to spell that out in policy for more clarification to be consistent with their recommendation. So we recommend that that you approve these local changes as they've been presented. Any questions that we may answer about those two policy recommendations?
Thank you, Dr. Hill. We do have a question. Mr. Chapa?
Thank you, President Mays. I don't have any questions. This is a policy that was vetted through the Governance Committee. As you can see from the length of the slide presentation, very minor changes, but necessary to bring our dual credit programs up for GPA purposes in line with other advanced programs, and also to clarify which student among the top performing of their campuses can receive a certain award from the state. So unless there are other questions, I move that we approve the amendments to board policy EIC local as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
So I've got a motion by Mr. Chapa, a second by Mrs. McMurrow. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, I vote yes. David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, I vote yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Okay. Motion passes in the affirmative. Thank you very much, Dr. Hill.
Thank
you. Next discussion action item is House Bill 3, our Goals and Progress Measure Update. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mason. So this evening, we bring for board consideration our House Bill 3 goals and our progress measure update. And I think it's important to note that this will also include some of the district improvement plan, which is the next item as well. This is, just for context, this is a continuation. We had a board workshop, thank you to the board for participating in that, a board workshop that delved deeply into performance scores, goal setting, and things like that, requirements from the state. So this is really the continuation of that discussion, and then asking the board for your consideration for approval of these goals. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Wirtz.
Good evening, President Mays, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos. I'd like to start off first by acknowledging Dr. Lopez and her team for the extensive amount of work that they've done to try to ensure that we not only have goals that move us along as a system, but work to close achievement gaps and do so in a smart and statistically sound way. So thank you for all of your hard work, because it has been a lot of work. Tonight, what I'm going to do is share with you what our goals are and our progress updates pertaining to House Bill 3. And then I'll make a recommendation, pause, and answer questions, and then I'll move on to district improvement planning if that's how you'd like to go. So first, I thought I would just reorient everybody about House Bill 3 and where it came from and why it's here. The state of Texas has adopted a goal that's called the 60 by 30 goal, which basically means that 60% of Generation Texas will have a post-secondary credential or degree by the year 2030. And so what does that mean for us in the public school system? It really comes down to two main ideas. One was that 60% proficiency students would have meet the proficiency standard for third grade reading in STAR, and that was strategically selected as a target point due to its implications for graduation rates, and for students to graduate without the need to have remediation in the post-secondary environment. So in essence, when we think about 60% proficiency of our graduates, we're looking at diplomas, high school. We're looking at enrolling and persisting in a post-secondary or higher education environment, and or either working in the military or having some sort of workforce credential. House Bill 3 actually has a couple of specific requirements pertaining to goals itself, and they're really around two things. One is third grade goals for reading and mathematics, and there is a specification in the statute about how you land on which student groups you're actually monitoring. They must be, if you have a student group that has 25 or more students that fall in it under the closing the gap domain, you monitor that, and or the board has the option to also set targets for bilingual or ESL programs or students that we considered emergent bilinguals, and you'll notice that in our groups that we included them. We also are required to set goals and targets for college, career, and military readiness under very similar requirements. The only point I would like to make about that is that we have targets that we're going to propose to you this evening. However, they are projected targets because that's a moving target at this point. There are some rules that are connected to CCMR that have not been adopted yet by TEA. So when we think about what we're about to present in terms of goals, there are ways that we want to go about strategically trying to impact the outcome and how that happens. And what we're really looking at is a symbiotic relationship between the processes that we put in place and the outcomes that those impact. And when I say process, that's just a general term for specific strategies. So in essence, what we want to do is we want to apply a strategy in the classroom and then monitor and measure to see if it's actually making a difference. Similar to conversations we've had in the past, we go to a doctor, they take your vitals, they give you a prescription, and you go back and forth multiple times to see if it's actually making a difference. That same thought process is the way we want to think about education. And there are two statistical tests that we'll run as we move along the way. One is called multiple regression for significance, and basically in essence what that means is, if you'll notice this simple picture, there are 3 lines. There are multiple things that may impact a learner's outcome. What we want to do is understand which of those things or strategies are actually significant. They're actually having a significance on that outcome. And then we want to measure, if it is significant, what's the effect size? How much effect is it actually having? And I think when it comes in terms of measuring an effect size, the reason this is important is because we want to know whether it's worth the time and effort and money that we're putting into it. So if you have a strategy that you've employed and you realize that there's not really significance between that strategy and the impact, that will cause you pause. And if you definitely can see that there's no effect size, meaning whether you do it or not makes no difference on the outcome, then you want to stop and think about either adjusting the strategy, picking a new one, or discontinuing it, because you're not going to get a return on your investment. For when it comes to effect size, you were really looking from a range of 0 to 1. So a 0.2 effect size would be considered a small effect, a 0.5 would be a medium effect, and a 0.8 is a large effect. If you get to a 0.1, and I'll just use Natalie's words from today, it's like, that's almost impossible. Like, it's very rare to find any effect size that comes to a 1, but we're looking for anywhere that's kind of in the medium range that would be significant. When we do this, we really use a couple of types of assessments, and I know in the workshop we went at this at length, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it tonight. I just wanted to highlight and remind everyone that there are different types of assessments that are used to understand how students are achieving in the classroom. One is a criterion referenced assessment, and that is an assessment that compares student against a cut point. So it really has no bearing on how the group of students is performing around you. It's simply, did you cross the finish line or didn't you? Whereas a norm reference assessment is really comparing how you perform against other peers that you have. So you may cross the finish line, but if you've crossed the finish line way above the rest of the group, then you're going to be in a high percentile. If the rest of the group is above you, or they actually perform better than you, and your cut point is the same, you might be in a lower percentile. But the important things when you're thinking about criterion and norm reference assessments is norm reference assessments won't always tell you the whole story. For example, if you're a school district and you're comparing yourself to other school districts and everyone has an A, that doesn't necessarily mean you're performing poorly because you're in the lower percentile of that A group. It's really just gives you a little bit more context to understand the data. And so as a system, what we want to do is utilize both of these two things to understand how students are achieving, so we can make sure not only do they cross the finish line, but that they are also performing what their peer groups are doing around them. These are the progress measurement tools that we'll use, and you'll see as we talk about the progress monitoring calendar which ones are going to be showing up at which times. I'm gonna kind of block them in large categories, and my focus around the progress monitoring tool really is not around career tech, AP, and IB, because those happen really once a year. What we're really talking about is curriculum assessments, STAR, and we also have these screeners in the middle. And so when you see me or hear me reference beginning, middle, or end of year math or reading screeners, we're specifically talking about the ways that we monitor the progress of students in mathematics and literacy from pre-K all the way through grade 7, specifically when it talks about screener. We utilize iStation this year, M-Class, Math Inventory, and Circle. And Circle is the approved one that we use to monitor kindergarten readiness for pre-K students. And then, of course, we have curriculum assessments, benchmarks, and then the STAR exam. So House Bill 3 overview really consists of these main things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how what we're using for each one, and then I'm going to run through the slides that will show you what the targets are, and I'll highlight a couple points maybe on each one. But because there are so many numbers on each slide, and I believe you have them in front of you, I'm not going to read every number verbatim because I don't think you want to be here until tomorrow morning. So the first goal is really around literacy, and the second goal is around mathematics. And what you're going to see under each column is there's a goal 1, and then we have a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and that really is just to organize it for you. In essence, what it does is we have the primary goal itself, like literacy, and then we tell you what's the goal around pre-K, what's the target for progress monitoring around kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then of course third grade is included in progress measures, of course in screeners, but then we have STAR for third grade. That's where that begins. You'll notice on the right-hand side we have the same thing in mathematics. So I'm going to begin with early literacy progress update regarding the goals connected to how we're moving towards third grade outcomes in STAR. And it's important to know, by the way, when we say early literacy, it's because House Bill 3 articulates third grade reading and below as early literacy versus intermediate grades. So the first target or goal around third grade reading is, as you can see it, you'll notice that we have a baseline and we have 2019. And it's important to note that the reason we have both is because we have 2019 is where we were, and then COVID hit. And just as every district across the country experienced a decline in achievement because of the way life happened during this pandemic, we adjusted our goals to reflect where we currently were. And then based upon how large that gap was and the realistic ability to move back to at least that baseline where we started prior to COVID, you'll notice that some of those baselines move back to that place of 2019 by year 3, and then some of them will move back there by year 5. But the goal is that by the time we get to year 5, we're either at or better than we were before the COVID slide actually took place. On the right-hand side of each slide, you're also going to notice a graph. And what the graph is basically going to show you is, in a graph format, where we were. You'll see a line that drops, which shows you what the impact was in terms of COVID-19, and then where the trajectory is if we were to progress along this line of goals along the way. Now, one initial question someone might have is, what happens if you get to year 2 and you're already way past year 2's goal? Well, the reason why we don't recommend adjusting it unless we see that we're really making so much progress that it would merit it is because, as you know, you're setting goals in advance, but the world goes like this and learning happens like this. And what people don't always think about either is every time you have a goal around third grade STAR, the next year is not actually the same students anymore. It's a whole completely different cohort. So what second graders are experiencing this year becomes next year's third grade challenges. And so you try to take all of that into consideration as you're planning for goals. This is a breakdown, and there is one of these for every category that talks about or articulates goals for every demographic that we're monitoring. We have all the student racial and ethnic demographic categories, as well as economically disadvantaged. We have special education. EL is there, that now is called EB. We call them emergent bilinguals now. EL is kind of the old term, but you'll see that their goals are articulated from the baseline of this year all the way through 5 years. The important thing to note about these targets, which I'm really proud of the team for having accomplished this, is we had two ideas around how to establish these targets. One is to make sure that the groups are progressing and getting better and better as the years move on, but also that the achievement gap between them closes. So what we tried to do is when we were creating goals, what the team tried to do was create an effect size on the goals to make sure that there was some compression that was happening along the years to close the achievement gap while the groups were getting better. Because if everyone's getting better together, the gap still persists. And so we want to make sure that that gap closes and that the achievement levels are there for all. This is what the forecast would look like if you were just comparing typical growth versus current goal trajectory. So the red line represents where you could have projected we would just be progressing had COVID never happened. This is not, this literally is just plugging in numbers and what was the typical growth that we saw year after year and how it would just kind of progress and grow. What you're going to notice on the green line is, well, you'll notice the initial dotted red line, which shows the COVID slide, and then the green line shows you where our trajectory is to try to get back to where we're going. Now, the natural question that you may have is, well, if the red line is up there and the green line is down there, are we ever going to get back to where we were hoping to get? And the answer is yes, it's just going to take more time before you get to the crossing point because you're starting a lot lower. And we want to make sure that we set goals that to the staff and the teacher are actually realistic and accomplished, well, smart. You know, they're actually something that can be accomplished, not something that's just up high in the sky or looks great on paper. The next one is pre-K. We use Circle as our pre-K screener for kindergarten readiness. It's on the commissioner's approved list. This one specifically, you're going to see this broken down into a literacy component and a math component, and you'll notice the goals are there. Our goals for us to move from 70 to 80% over the next 5-year period for kindergarten readiness. And then, of course, you'll notice this is the breakdown over the 5-year period. The next one is kindergarten. We use M-Class. This is a brand new assessment that we just started this year. M-Class is basically powered by an assessment called DIBBLES, and it looks at phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. There's a comprehensive literacy assessment that's embedded in it, which looks at foundational skills, comprehension assessments, and then it also it provides a dyslexia screener. So if a student is possibly at risk to have dyslexia, it will highlight that. So this assessment is being taken this year in kindergarten, first and second grade, and then in third and beyond, we're going to be adding that in future years. So as you can see on this slide, the goal is to move from 51 to 75, and then you can see the trajectory on the graph on the side. This is the breakdown by demographic. And then we have first grade literacy moving from 52 to 73, same thing. You'll notice that there's a breakdown by year in the grid on the left and then a graphic representation of that grid on the right. Demographics. And what we tried to do is highlight for you in the green box when we actually get back to where we were before. So you can kind of see whether it's a 3-year goal or a 5-year goal. Now, this is actually a progress update. So one of the questions might be, well, where are we today in first grade, for example, who took the M-Class first BOI screener at the beginning of the year? So as you can see, we had a group of students in first grade. You can see the number there on the left-hand side, 2,800 approximately, that participated in the M-Class assessment between August 30th and September 24th. And the way M-Class does is it actually categorizes students based on their performance on these subgroups that I was talking about: phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, whether they're at the benchmark point or they're below benchmark or below proficiency or well below. And you can see here that we have a significant number of students that are well below in terms of reading. This is not something that we did not necessarily, and we did anticipate this. If you think about it, these were the students that were in pre-K when COVID started, and now we're about 18 months later, so they're entering school, many of them for the first time in a meaningful way. And so the level of reading that they're coming to us in first grade is significantly different than what we typically see. In second grade literacy, this is where we are in terms of the goals we're going for, from 55 to 75. And then this is the breakdown by subgroup. And then this is the progress update for second grade. I'm only going to share with you tonight first and second grade because kindergarten is currently doing their assessment and pre-K is right. They actually overlap with pre-K, kinder, and pre-K. So next month we'll bring you what kinder and pre-K are looking like. But for second grade literacy, we have, as you can see, 2650, 2679 that participate in the assessment, and about half of them are well below the mark, and a little more than half are, if you include below or well below. These were students that would have been in kindergarten that moved to second grade. I'll just have a quick side comment that someone mentioned to me that I thought was really interesting, just to put this into perspective. When you are in pre-K and kindergarten, there are some skills that you teach kids that require face-to-face instruction, like fine motor skills. We take for granted that kids show up to school and they can hold a pencil and they know how to cut on a straight line using scissors and things like that. We have second grade students that are in class now that never had that. So you're literally teaching kids to read and write using tools that we take for granted we've always used because they've been at home in front of a computer for so long. So the complexity of this scenario can't be over actually expressed. So this is House Bill Goal 3, Goal 2, and this is specifically around math. So you're going to see the same process. I'm going to show you everything again, but I'm going to show you from mathematics. So here we have third grade STAR. Our initial place in 2019 was 73%, reaching the approaches standard, and we are now at 45%. So our goal is to get back there over a 5-year period. And so you're going to notice on the graph, on the graph on the right-hand side, the COVID slide dip, and then the trajectory over the next 5 years. And then here is the breakdown by sub-pop. And you'll notice that the box is now boxed around the 5-year mark because that's where the target to get to is. This is just another representation of the forecast. This is not, again, I want to emphasize, the red does not indicate our perception that we would have flatlined. It literally was just a punch in of numbers based upon what statistically kind of would go, not that you would not have applied a process to make a difference. But on the bottom, you'll see the trajectory of how we intend to get back to that place, and you'll notice that we intend to get there over the next 5 years. For pre-K, we use Circle again. Numeracy is another area that we monitor. We don't have a 2019 baseline. We have because Circle's one that's new, so we have a 2021 baseline, obviously, and our goal is to get to 76% by year 5. And you'll notice that here is our trajectory based on demographic. And then kindergarten, we utilize something called the math inventory to monitor instruction, or actually progress in math. The way math inventory works is they have 2 scores that the students receive. They receive a quantile skills score and concept. So basically there are 500 mathematical skills, and depending on how a student performs, they receive a quantile skill or concept score for that skill. What it allows a teacher to do is understand where in all the skills that a student needs to learn, where their students fall. And then they also receive something called a Q measure. And what a Q measure does is it measures the difficulty of the question that's being asked of the student in the assessment. What happens is the quantile skills and concepts that are related to one another are then grouped in what they call knowledge clusters, and then those knowledge clusters allow a teacher to decide who needs to be in small groups, how do I differentiate from my class group based upon where they're falling. So in kindergarten, once they get through that screening process, they receive a quantile score, and there's a proficiency cut point. And so here we have our kindergarten, where we go from 47% to 70%. And this is broken down by demographic. And then here is first grade. And then this is the update. So how are they doing this year now that first grade has taken the math inventory? So we had a little over 3,250 students in first grade participate in the math inventory between August 30th and September 24th. And as you can see, we have a significant number of students that are what they call below basic, which would be below the proficient level that we're looking for. This is aligned to what we've seen across the state around mathematics. Mathematics is probably, it is the content area that took the greatest hit in COVID, and just natural thought process would tell you simply it's very skill-based. It builds very sequentially on prior skills, and so when those skills are not taught, it's very difficult to engage in the content the following school year. This is second grade. So we want to move from 46 to 70. And then here you can see the demographic breakdown. And then here is the results for the first part of our school year. And you can see second grade looks very much like first grade. So in essence, what this tells us is not only do we have challenges that have to really be addressed in star level grades, but we have a cohort of students, several cohorts of students in primary grades that really have to be accelerated in order to not have this really affect their educational outcomes for years to come. The last part of House Bill 3 is college and career and military readiness. And so just like with third grade STAR results, there are target indicators around CCMR. We may have to come back and re-bring these to you simply because the rules are changing, and so those rules may affect the targets that we can actually place, because we might actually be able to do better than we have. But right now, our goal is to go from, actually this is the wrong slide. I think you might have the right one in front of you. It should say 41 is the target, is the starting point. Is that correct? 53 is the one you have? 44. This is not the right slide. We had multiple versions I was working off, and this is my mistake, but I'll send you the correct one. But our current baseline that we project for this school year is not 53, it's actually 44. There is a component of CCMR that changed this year. In the past, the rules have changed around military readiness, for example. It used to be that if a student expressed any interest or desire to know about the military, you can count them as military ready. Now you have to actually enlist in the military. The problem is that TEA is not getting access from the U.S. military about who is choosing to enlist and not enlist. They're keeping that confidential, and so that has impacted a lot of districts. And so our strategy for ensuring students earn CCMR points has shifted away from that and more towards other things. And one example tonight, of course, is like the dual credit. Now students can actually receive weighted credit to help them feel inclined to participate in those, which will give them like TSIA points. The last part I want to share with you is the monitoring calendar. So one of the components about House Bill 3 is that there's a monitoring calendar. When we presented this back originally, the board's decision was to only come back once a year. When we went to the workshop, there was a desire for us to start having a spring forth academic progress every month. So what we did is we took the district curriculum and screener assessment calendar that's related to House Bill 3 and district improvement plan goals, and plotted them month by month about when we would be able to share with you the outcomes once the assessments are happening. Now, when you look at this calendar, you're going to notice BOI, MOI, and EOI used, which stands for beginning, middle, and end of year assessments. And those are screeners. So all the data that I just finished sharing with you that wasn't STAR, those are screener assessments. And then we also have curriculum assessments that we use during primarily for monitoring progress towards STAR outcomes for STAR level grades. So you'll see curriculum 1 and 2 assessments on there. We have an EOC STAR retest for high school students in December, so we can share with you preliminary results in January of those. Those are students that are taking them again, having not passed the first time. And then in future months, for example, we can share with you the preliminary STAR results, and then in August we'll come back and share with you where we finally are and what the state is projecting our rating to be. One thing I want to highlight on here, if I was reading this, I'd be like, well, why am I getting some of these so late? And the reason is it's late based on how often the board meets and when the actual assessment is given. So in some situations, we actually finish the assessment 5 days before the board meets, which does not provide enough time to crunch all the numbers and share out what the progress is. So it forces us to report the following month. So that's why you're kind of seeing some that seem delayed, but it's only because of where they fall on the calendar and how that meshes up with how often the board's actually meeting. So here you're going to see in October, today, we'll bring you the results for reading and math screeners. We will share with you the results in November around the curriculum assessments, and you can kind of read through the slide to see when the different assessments will happen. All of these things will monitor 2 points: House Bill 3, progress towards House Bill 3 goals, and progress towards how we're performing on our goals or performance objectives that we're going to ask you to consider tonight for the district improvement plan. So our recommendation is that the board adopt the revised goals, progress measures, and monitoring calendar as presented for House Bill 3.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wirtz. Did we want to do questions before we move to the second part? Okay. Do I have any colleagues that have questions? Yes, Mrs. McMurray.
I just have a quick question about one of our new assessments, M-Class.
Yes.
So when we look at first and second grade literacy, I know we are moving from iStation to M-Class. And when we track our goals, is there a cohesive correlation between the two screeners?
This is a very good question and one that's been challenging for us.
I bet.
So, yes, so that's the exact question we were asking, because initially when we presented House Bill 3 goals, we presented goals based on how we wanted a first grader to perform, and if a first grader was performing at a certain level, what we could project their outcome to look like on STAR in third grade, so we can make adjustments and make sure they were aligned to each other. When you introduce a new assessment like M-Class, that relationship kind of breaks. So what we're doing now is we have to now marry those two parts together and create a bridge. So the goals that you're seeing here are based upon the proficiency rates that we would have expected out of iStation applied to the proficiency rate of M-Class. But what we're going to do is when they finish taking the assessment like we just did, now what we'll do is we'll equate BOI for first grade M-Class with BOI for iStation to see what their relationship is and how do you make those two come together. And then by the time you get to the end of the year, we'll be able to start making predictions for that cohort towards third grade. And then the next year, the first grade cohort that moves to second grade, we'll be able to use their results to move to third grade. So it'll take us a few years to get exactly where we had it before because the assessment's new. But by the end of the year, we'll have a direct relationship between at least those two assessments to do exactly what you're describing, because it does make for less cohesiveness in your planning when you insert a brand new screener. We will have to go through the same process should we choose to adopt a new math screener this year, next school year.
Right.
But that's an excellent question, yeah.
And then when our teachers analyze their data using these new screeners, will they be able to drill down to the TEKS? Does it give us performance by TEKS? And
it's not necessary. Well, we can make the alignment to TEKS, but it's not done by TEKS. It's done by mathematical concepts, which are then embedded in the TEKS. So a teacher could look and see what standards they're working on and how those students performed on those math concepts on the assessment. But since the assessment is used across the country, it's not necessarily just Texas. So it wouldn't say necessarily the TEKS. It will tell them of the 500 math concepts they're being tested on, they'll be able to make that connection when they're planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McMurray. Mrs. Fowler, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, President Mays. Dr. Wirtz, I'm sure your team has an extensive plan for how we're going to catch these kids up, but could you maybe just talk on maybe a couple of things that you're thinking about doing that would help the kids get caught up a little bit?
Yes, actually, the next presentation is all about that. So there are several components that we're doing, and I'll share with you about those things. We have a math and literacy comprehensive plan with professional learning attached to it, individual coaching of teachers, and then we also have some extensive tutoring that's connected to House Bill 4545. Those are just a couple of the things that I'll talk about tonight. The thing about this plan that's challenging is it's complex and it has to be individualized for students. So that's the reason why the progress measures are so important, because it allows a teacher to understand where is Stephen compared to, Sam, and what kind of small groups does he need to be placed in, connected to his screener data that might be same or different, and how much more time of instruction does he need. I will share in the next presentation some of the principles, which I've shared before, that we're kind of using to guide our thoughts around this, because what we don't want to do is stop and remediate while the rest of the grade level kind of passes on to the months go by. You end up digging one hole while you're trying to fill another. But we do have a process for helping teachers to prioritize which standards are the most important to spend their time on based upon where they might identify gaps in the content that they're teaching.
And kind of piggyback on that, do you think that we will need to hire additional tutors or teachers that would be able to help with individualized teaching?
It's preliminary to say that. Right now, we're in the process of completing what House Bill 4545 calls an accelerated learning plan. And so the end of this month, those will be finalized, and we'll have a sense of which students actually are going to need that extra tutoring. One of the things that TA allowed us to do, for example, is if a student did not take STAR last year, they could participate in the BOI this year, and if they pass it, they do not have to receive all that extra tutoring. And we have several students that have actually qualified under that, so it's actually takes some of that workload down. And so at the end of the month, we'll have a better assessment of what that looks like. I will say, just candidly, it's very challenging. This situation is very challenging, especially House Bill 4545, because the teacher to student ratio is almost impossible to achieve, not only financially, but just people-wise. So we have actually expressed that to the state commissioner, who has said, to basically do the best that you can. So we'll have a better idea about that answer probably once we get further, in a couple of weeks, once I have all of those numbers, and we can work with HR to see how it looks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fowler. Mr. Wilbanks.
Thank you, President Mays, and thank you, Dr. Wirtz, for your presentation. There are just a couple of questions I had in terms of the goals that we're adopting tonight. As you know, our previous goals, and I think the goals that we have in our DIP, also include 8th grade math and 9th grade literacy goals. And my question that I posited earlier to my colleagues was, what you have here in terms of the 3 goals that we have, or the kind of the minimum, the recommended minimum from the state in terms of the goals that are adopted. I'm a believer in less is more, especially when you're trying to set the highest priorities for the district. But since we already identified those as critical goals in our DIP, if it makes sense to also include them in our progress monitoring and our adopted HB3 goals as a board. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
So the vitals, I think you're referring to the things we talked about before. You're going to see in the next few minutes, we do have those broken down by the vitals, the content areas, and they are being included. I did include them in this monitoring calendar. So all the things we would normally monitor of those vitals are also included in this calendar. So when I come, for example, I'll just give you a quick example. When I come in December and we talk about BOI kindergarten readiness screener for pre-K, I'll be sharing with you the second curriculum assessment for grades 3 through 11, which are directly connected towards those targets. Not every grade level necessarily takes a screener. In fact, 7th grade only takes the reading screener. That's what's required. But we can bring all of those. We also have, in the actual DIP goal that's posted, you'll see a whole goal. So it'll say reading as a system, which includes 3 through 11, right? Or 3 through 10. And then you'll see a math goal. We will not have inside the district improvement plan individual grade levels, but as a system, we're monitoring those, and we're going to report those out. Yeah, and we'll report those out to you in terms of progress. But in the plan itself, we have the whole goal, and then what will happen is we will monitor the vitals, and then individual campuses will receive their targets for all the grade levels they're responsible for monitoring. So if I'm an elementary school, I'll get a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th grade reading and math. They'll get a science one for and they'll put those in their plans. But we will report out to you how we're progressing on our vitals. That'll be part of this calendar.
So what was, for 8th grade math, unfinished learning or learning loss that we experienced there. I don't remember those offhand, but they were significant, right?
Fourth grade?
8th grade.
8th grade math was our most significant.
Yeah, right. That's
That's a vital we'll be sharing with you.
given the significant drop there, I think it raises to the level of importance that we would, as a board, should adopt that as part of our HB3 official goals, board adopted goals. And I would probably posit the 9th grade literacy as well, since that's a vital that we're already attuned to as a district as being important.
I would recommend that you adopt it you can consider as part of district improvement plan, but it's outside the scope of House Bill 3. House Bill 3 is focused around early literacy. It's not focused on high school.
So our HB3 adopted goals, those are the recommended minimum, but we can as a board, adopt other goals, like 8th grade literacy, and I know other districts have. So I would still posit to my colleagues that those are appropriate for us to adopt as our board adopted goals for monitoring. And I'd open it up to my colleagues to see if they agree.
Mr. Hogg.
Yeah, thank you, President May. And Ms. Wilbanks, I agree, and I think, here's what I would say. I think we've got the HB3s right now, and as we finalize strategic plan going forward in the next year, in the next couple of months, we add some of those, because I think there's also things you can look at, like a portfolio graduate. You know, what's a portfolio graduate look like, and what do they look like? And I do think it encompasses, to make sure Dr. Wirtz is right, the early literacy is critical. It meets our HB3. And, you know, with 3 key goals on this, and then you've got your interim goals, your progress goals, which I think are the right path to go forward. Adding something like in the 8th grade, adding a portfolio shot of a graduate as one of our goals. Whatever we want to add on those type of things with some progress, still keeping us within that 3 to 5 main key goals, I think is a good idea. Do we tweak that 8th grade? Is it 8th grade? Is it encompass a little more? I think the 8th grade's a good idea. I would probably lean towards that. But I think adopting these for HB3 and then adding those others in the next, as we finalize the strategic plan, would probably be my path to go from this. Just not knowing exactly what that 8th grade was and that next one is, I'd probably say adopt them in 2 bunches would just be my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Haga. Since we don't have the actual, I mean, for the formal adopted goals, we need them broken out by sub-pop and our EL or emergent bilingual and Dist students. And so I think coming back and adopting those subsequently, but I would highly encourage us to adopt those. And so they're, you know, and the idea with HB3 is it's not just our board adopted goals, but these are the things that would drive our strategic plan. And they're also the goals that we hold the superintendent accountable for in his evaluation. You know, these are all supposed to be tightly aligned. And so I think it does make sense to bring those back, all broken out, and then we can decide to adopt them as part of our HB3 goals.
If I may, I have them tonight, actually. That's the next presentation, and I'm going to ask you to adopt them. It'll be
as part of the DIP.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
they'll be included as part of the monitoring calendar, and then I can do it any way that you prefer. They're broken. I have it broken down not only 3rd grade, but I'll also have 8th grade reading and math. You'll have EOCs, English 1 and 2, Algebra 1, all of those. I'm going to share those with you tonight, and then we can either I'll propose them to be adopted as part of DIP, or I can bring them, but they're included in this monitoring calendar just for your information.
So then we can go ahead and I would prefer to go ahead and when we since we've technically seen that beforehand, I would what we can do is we can postpone this motion to adopt these at the end and do both motions at the end of the presentation after you've presented those to us.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that I had them here for you if you want to see
awesome. Awesome. And I like the fact that you did include the EL and the Dist as part of the breakout subgroups. One thing is I noticed on the board, on the monitoring calendar, unless I'm missing something, you don't have any updates except for, I guess, at the end in August on the CCMR. Is that correct?
That's because those come at the end of the year. It's really difficult to share progress updates on CCMR because many of them are connected to things that happen at any random time. For example, if a student earns a point because they take an assessment for a workforce cert, they take that assessment when they're ready and proficient for that workforce cert. There's not a target date specifically like STAR. We could show you this is how many more kids have earned points over the last, semester or month. We can do those kinds of things, but I wouldn't be able to articulate this happens at this point, this happens. The other thing about it too is some of them are connected to like their scores on AP and IB exams. Those are given late in the spring, or it might be they qualify to take through TSIA to take a dual credit class. So they happen at different moments in time, but as I said, we do keep track of exactly who has points and who doesn't, and we could share with you routinely how many more students in a specific cohort have actually earned a point or haven't. We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And just some housekeeping stuff on the HB3 requirements. I just want to make it official. So we're supposed to publish, when we publish these, the administrator for the HB3 goals, and I assume that would be yourself?
Yes.
Okay, and just to make sure, I don't think you're listed as the administrator on the website currently?
I don't know that I am.
Yeah, and we're
We can do that.
supposed to officially post that. So now that we're, and just to be clear to my colleagues, we had our HB3 goals, now we've had COVID, and now we've had to reset them, if you will. And so what we're doing tonight is resetting our HB3 goals to update the plan given the COVID slide. And when we do that, we can take care of those housekeeping info. Wanted to be clear with that, and I think that is all my questions for now. I think we'll go ahead and wait on the motion until later, and we can go ahead and go into the district improvement plan.
Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, President Mays. Dr. Wertz, I appreciate the detail of the presentation. I just had one question. You went into a little bit of detail about how you determined to project forward the amount of progress we'd be making. And, it's no secret that there's opportunity and learning gaps, and that's reflected in the data that you have for the projections. And even over the course of 5 years, you've still got those gaps built in, disaggregated among racial and socioeconomic groups. So can you explain just a little bit how your team constructed the projections going forward for the groups that are starting off the furthest back in terms of the learning gaps?
So, and I'll give you, I'll tell you basically, and if it doesn't answer specifically enough, then I'm gonna call my expert back. Where'd she go? Well, my expert that was in the back of the room. So in essence, what we tried to do is we looked to see, one, how are we moving forward as an entire district? And how do we make sure that the campus goals and targets for each of their subgroups actually add up to what we're trying to get at the system level? And then, as I was mentioning earlier, how do we make sure there's compression? So there were a couple of things that we tried to do. We tried to hold, as part of the model, hold for example, economically disadvantaged status as an indicator that would allow us to take into consideration that was the situation for a specific student group, so that we didn't have one school that was from a highly economically disadvantaged that was serving a highly economically disadvantaged population, not have that scenario taken into consideration as opposed to another school who doesn't have that situation. So in the model, the way it was kind of designed is we looked at each of their groups, we looked at where we wanted to go as a system, what each individual's group's contribution to that overall number was, and we applied an effect size for each of the groups depending upon how fast we wanted that gap to close so that there was compression as it was moving. But their number for each of the groups individually, it really looked at where does the whole system want to go, their contribution to it, and how many points those individual groups had to make in order for us to reach that target, and how do you do it in a way that allows these certain groups to move a little more quickly than groups that are already kind of performing at higher levels. That's not like scientific in terms of like statistical knowledge, but that's the basic way we did it.
No, and that makes sense.
Okay.
I was just curious because I do think that the goals are appropriately bold and a little aggressive, even over a 5-year period. And, but glad to see that you built in some compression in the gaps, because I think it's easy to sit up here and say that we'd like to close all those gaps completely. And I know that that's the goal we're all working towards, but it's not going to happen over a 5-year period. So I really appreciate that you didn't come in with some sort of unrealistic expectation even on that front, but also built in some aggressiveness in trying to close those gaps, even recognizing that we're not going to close them over a 5-year period.
Right, and one thing I would add is that it was very intentional, the thought that you kind of think about at the state level. So when the district receives a district rating like an A, B, C, or D, their cut point is different depending on what their economically disadvantaged rate is. We thought about that same thing for individual campuses, so there was consideration about a school that had a highly impoverished population, what those challenges were, and how that may or may not look different than a school that didn't have those challenges, and what level of contribution that should be playing in the overall system movement, so that there was more realistic thoughts about how fast you can move, not the idea that everyone's just going to move at the same pace, because we're going to kind of be blind to the fact that they have different challenges. So.
Right. No, and I think that's something that we repeatedly talk about. We wish the system did more as a whole, because now everything's condensed down into a letter grade, and you can tell from this presentation just a sliver of how much goes into it. If you don't live this every day, how complicated it can be, and just how many of those variables that we know make a real difference in the lives of our students and their academic success. But everything at the end of the day gets modeled in some way, and we have to move forward because this is the accountability system we've been given. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Mays. Mr. Chapa essentially asked the question that I had, which you could probably guess that I would ask that question, because I pretty much do all the time on how you get there. I would just say the complexity of this process is phenomenal. Some would look at this going, why do we have to do all of this? But there is so much detail on what we have to do to move the needle with the state rules and accountability. Some would say you're moving too slow. Others would say, how are you going to get there that quickly? It just doesn't make sense. So I really appreciate the detail, the explanation, and appreciate that what you're giving us is really surface level. There's so much more drill down in all of this. I guess one thought that I have is that, the reality is we're going to kind of linearly go in that same direction. And so it's going to be a longer time before we cross. We don't know. There's so many things that we're putting into the system right now, besides the focus on the academics with the mental and emotional health and all of those things that we're able to do and start doing now. Just like you said during the presentation, it's possible that we'll all of a sudden start seeing an uptick in whatever subgroup and course target. And I just wanted to put that out there that me personally, the end goal isn't to get to where we were going. It is to go much further.
Right.
I mean, that's really it. Because pre-COVID, we were loving where we were going, but the idea was, how do we continue to accelerate this? It wasn't to get back to where we were pre-COVID. Right. So I just want to put that out there.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. I do not see any other questions, so Dr. Wertz, if you'd like to continue to your second part.
So this is specifically about the district improvement plan, and in this time of year, every year we bring forward the performance objectives. And what's different about this year than previous years is not only will I be sharing with you performance objectives but to adopt, but I'll also be sharing with you, as Mr. Wilbanks was referring to, some of the vitals that I'm calling vitals, but basically these progress measures at other grade levels. So I just wanted to re-articulate that the goal that the board has adopted is singular and equitable in nature. It's about 100% of our students graduating exceptionally prepared for college, career, and citizenship. And as we've talked about a lot, we've spent an extensive amount of time thinking about what exceptionally prepared means. And so it is our hope that these goals will reinforce our efforts around that area. So the first district improvement plan performance objective pertains to reading. And our goal this year, as you're kind of as articulated earlier, is we want to stay narrow and go deep. Our focus is around reading and mathematics, and the reason we're proposing our primary focus around those is because the other content areas are implicated by both reading and mathematics, and those are the strongest, those are the most vital content areas kids need to master, and where some of our greatest dips have occurred. So this one specifically is the overall district reading goal from third through high school. It's to move from 61 to 79. You'll see it broken down by demographic again. The second district improvement plan performance objective 2 is around mathematics. This was to go from 51 to 79. And you'll notice that there's a significant difference there. This is the breakdown. And then I wanted to propose, as we were talking a little about earlier, some of the vitals. Included in the vitals, and I did not repeat them in this process, but they include CCMR, because I literally just finished talking about them. I didn't want to like copy and paste them into the same slide twice. But we will be reporting on those, and we're happy to do what you requested earlier, because CCMR does make up a significant portion of our letter grade at the end of the day. STAR only plays a portion of it. So here's our third grade reading, which we've already talked about. So I'm just going to kind of go through these quickly because you've seen these already. Here you can see the same slide of the reading and the forecast. This one is related to math, which is connected to performance objective 2. So you've seen this one already as well. So I'm just going to go through that kind of quickly. And then we have 8th grade reading. So here's 8th grade reading moving from 67 to 86. And you'll notice on the far left-hand side, we were at 83. We're now at 67. So you can kind of see the drop. Our goal is to get back to at least pre-COVID by year 3. This is the same scenario, and actually the same statistical model was used to kind of craft these targets. 8th grade reading, just in a graphic format, versus the typical growth versus the new trajectory. And then we have 8th grade math. 84 was where we were, and we're currently sitting at 39. So to the point you're making earlier, it's very significant, and you could see on the chart that drop just took a steep. Because of that, you'll notice that this goal is a 5-year goal, not a 3-year goal. And then this is just what it looks like represented in a graph format. And here's Algebra 1. We were at 81, we're now at 60, and so our goal is to get back up there. This target is currently set to go from 60 to 70. And then we have English 1 from 60 to 63. You'll see on the left-hand side, the right-hand side of graph. English 2. And then here's the CCMR target goals. This was the correct slide. So the one I gave you before was the wrong one. I didn't duplicate it twice. So here's the right one. I was like, I knew I had it in there. 44 to 56. And then here's the breakdown. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is this is more in response to Ms. Fowler's question is, what are we doing? We're going to come back with more specific, we've given many presentations about some of the specific strategies we're using, but I thought it'd be worth just reiterating a few of them tonight since we're talking about our goals and our targets and where they're headed. And we really when we started thinking about how we were going to address unfinished learning, we really focused on 6 guiding principles that were published in June of 2020 from the Council of Great City Schools, which was done by really a collaboration of all the major school districts across the country who are experiencing the same challenges. And these principles really were about sticking to grade level content and instructional rigor to make sure we weren't reducing that rigor simply because kids had gaps. that we were focusing on depth of instruction and trying to provide as much flexibility for teachers in terms of pace. There is still a pacing guide because you need to get through all of third grade, but we wanted to make sure that there was the opportunity for teachers to really think about, hey, we have to make sure that we're closing the gaps as we're moving. To help with that, we prioritize the content and the learning. So in our curriculum documents, we have elevated specifically assessments for a teacher to use to help understand where the gaps are, and also how to prioritize which content to actually focus on to help fill those gaps. We also are encouraging or actually working to ensure that we include each and every learner. So you'll notice on our targets, there is no learner that we haven't thought about in terms of our demographics. We're trying to keep track of everybody. And then really focus on identifying the gaps early through instruction. Some of the misnomers that we've talked about a lot before is that it's easy just to overly concentrate on one data point, such as STAR, and that misuse really creates an inappropriate plan. So what we wanted to do is provide multiple assessments that allow a teacher to triangulate and understand exactly where the students have to grow. And then finally, capitalizing commonalities. COVID was an experience that we're all been in and are still working through, and it's something that we all have in common. And so how do we build on that experience with kids in the classroom? Our focus, as I mentioned earlier, specifically around literacy and mathematics. We have a comprehensive literacy plan and a math plan, and they're both posted to the website. I was going to highlight just a couple of some of the main components tonight, which you've seen in the past. Our mathematics model teaches students to go from the concrete to the abstract. So when you think about mathematics, you're in early grades, you're literally manipulating objects to learn how to add and subtract. Eventually, that moves all the way to an abstract point where you're sitting in calculus or algebra and you're dealing with equations. So how do we take kids along that continuum? So in our plan, we've articulated instructional strategies and approaches, a common problem-solving model across the district, classroom instruction protocols, what the math cycle should look like, how do you leverage the 12 best practices in the mathematics classroom, and how do you utilize assessment to drive instruction. For reading, it's the balanced literacy model. On the left-hand side, you'll see the bullets. You'll notice that we have word study, reading workshop, writing workshop. That happens a lot in the elementary. And then when you get to secondary, you're going to see things more like close reading or literature circles. We call it the big 5+1 because it's all of the components of basic literacy, which include phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension that we talked about in the screener, but it also includes the writing. One thing that's different this year or next year that's different than prior years is there used to be a standalone writing assessment for students. That now has gone away, and it's going to be embedded into the reading. So basically, in essence, when you finally see it, the way TA is showing us is it'll literally be a passage that the student reads, and then there'll be a question, open-ended prompt about that where they have to critically think about it and write. So we want to make sure that writing process is taught and it's actually monitored and leveraged in the classroom every day. We have professional learning on all of those topics actually happening, but we also wanted to combine it with coaching. So we are focusing primarily on four best practices, research-based best practices within the math and the reading classroom, and we are providing one-on-one coaching for every math and reading teacher in the system, and the model we use is called eGrow. And then finally, the focus is really on acceleration, not remediation. And so this is just a couple of bullets of a few things that we talked about: prioritizing our standards, implementing House Bill 4545 with tutoring, professional learning communities, and lesson design. Some of the coaching not only is just coaching, it literally is how do you, once you've learned some of these best practices, we'll literally go into a PLC with the teachers and help them in the lesson design. We're working on building an exemplar lesson repository so that there are exemplar lessons for teachers to pull from to use in their classroom. And then finally, the implementation of sheltered instruction and Summit K-12, which are strategies for our emergent bilinguals to help students who are learning English as a second language to progress in their acquisition of the English language in context of an academic setting. So administration recommends the board adopt the district improvement plan performance objectives as presented.
Thank you once again, Dr. Wertz. Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Mays. Excuse me. Thank you for the information, Dr. Wertz. So I don't have any questions over what you've presented, except can you talk to the teacher experience just a little bit more? You've provided great information on the resources, the professional learning, the coaching. Are you planning on doing temperature checks with teachers, even with all of this that you're providing us support? They still may feel like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning here. So can you address that? Because our teachers are also dealing with regular learning plus coming back from COVID.
Right.
And all of the other things that they're dealing with all these kids that are coming back from COVID. So I'm really wanting to make sure that our teachers are taken care of in their feeling of confidence and not, oh my gosh, the district they're giving us all these things, but I'm still drowning here.
Right. So I totally agree with you, and there is a balance between keeping things as normal as possible and also having to push the gas because you
Right.
have all these gaps and you have to
Right.
fill them because
Right.
the kids won't be ready. And so there are actually multiple ways in which we can do what you're referring to as temperature checks outside of even the traditional survey. We have teacher representatives from all the campuses that we meet with routinely that give us feedback from their groups, meaning they can actually talk to us about how their teacher groups are feeling within their own campus. We meet every month with the campus coaches, that each one from each of the campuses, and they also can provide us feedback specifically on how their teachers are receiving coaching and actually how they're actually feeling and things that we can do differently for them. We can conduct focus groups. We have a new curriculum director, and one of the things that we've talked about specifically is meeting routinely with teacher groups throughout the district just to ask them about their feedback about how are they feeling about professional learning, are the curriculum documents meeting their needs, what are some recommendations and choice things that they have for us. So there is intention around doing those things outside of a survey, but more in a face-to-face kind of environment.
Yeah, good. Well, I appreciate that. We're all in this together, and the teachers obviously are the front line in making it all happen, and they know that, and they love on these kids, they care, and I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep them empowered and motivated and healthy as well. So thank you.
That's fair.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Wilbanks?
Thank you, President Mays. And thank you again, Dr. Wertz. I have a question about kind of piggybacking on supports that we can provide for teachers to help them out. Can you go back and explain how the HB 4545 tutoring is going to be implemented, for a typical classroom, how many tutors it's going to provide, and how we want to best utilize those tutors to kind of offload things for the teachers and allow them to do the type of just-in-time interventions that they're going to need to be able to do through our acceleration process.
Sure, I give you a basic idea of the framework, but I won't be able to give you the specifics about the volume of people yet because we're still in the process of assessing that. We have until the end of the month to do that. But in essence, there are in the elementary, I'll use that as an example, there is what we call I&E time, which is for intervention and also for enrichment. We have set aside a half an hour for reading and a half an hour for mathematics outside of what you would do as typical core instruction to actually provide tutoring or small group instruction in that environment. We also are recently gone through an RFP for tutoring services that we're processing right now to hire a vendor that will help assist in that process. And then, of course, we have our after-school tutoring, tutoring before school. The challenge around this, House Bill 45, which is not a small one, is the volume of people that are required to do the task don't exist.
Right. That was my next line of questioning.
Right. So even if we were to say we needed 4 teachers for a school, the challenge is every school district in the entire state needs those same 4 teachers, and there's still only 4 of them. So the challenge that we have is to try to figure out a way to provide the services the best way we can and to target the students that need the services the most in the most creative ways we can do it. So through after-school programming, can we have enrichment programs for after-school programming as we work with Mr. Perales and his team, and can we embed tutoring process in there? Many teachers are willing to also participate and do the tutoring, but to your point, that also adds more time to their day, which is tiring. So it's a fine balance. There's no specific total solution, but in essence, that's the basic structure. I will say we will have a better idea of exactly how many teachers are technically needed or how many kids need to be tutored and how many teachers it would require based on the bill by the end of the month, because we will have assessed them. All the kids that qualified for BOI will become off that list, and then I'll literally be able to know, okay, at Peach Elementary, this is how many kids actually need tutoring based on House Bill 4545. This is the number of people that can actually do it. What's the difference between those two spots? We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I assume the same holds for TAs, and what's our goal per campus in terms of staffing additional TAs for the classroom to help while the teacher's doing that small group instruction?
It really comes down to the same question that I was mentioning. Once we know exactly what the need is, then we can consider whether we're hiring a certified teacher. The challenge that you're describing, which is a real one, is the problem is House Bill 4545 has to be tutoring has to be provided by a certified teacher.
Right.
So you can't if you place an uncertified teacher into a classroom to keep a class moving while the teacher pulls small groups, now you have a larger set of students that aren't being taught either. So you create this problem because I'll just give you a quick example. If I have 90-minute math lesson, and I want to work on small groups as a teacher, I still have 90 minutes math. I can't place a non-certified teacher into the math class to teach that 90 minutes while I'm pulling small groups. So the problem we're running into, that every district runs into, is there's only 435 instructional minutes in a day, and you have to be a certified classroom teacher to provide that baseline instruction, and you also have to be a certified teacher to provide the tutoring time. So it becomes complex. We can, for small group instruction, once the core time has been taught, you could use a TA to cover that class, but that's only during I&E. That's not during core time.
Well, I mean, thinking back to when I was a man of leisure and my wife pulled me in as a volunteer in the classroom and my son was in, first, second grade, that's what I did. I mean, I'm not a TA, and I was there doing stations with kids while the teacher was doing small group instruction. I mean,
Yeah,
can we rely on volunteer, PTA moms and dads to do the same kind of thing? And I would assume the TAs could help with that. And then the other thing is, we know coaching is a highly effective lever in terms of moving the needle. But what about, utilizing the coaches to kind of fill in from time to time to help provide that additional research? Because I think the coaches, from what I understand, we had a teacher who spoke, and I'm also a big fan of KISS. And we do need to make, as Dr. Rice said, those teachers are feeling overwhelmed now with the task. This is a heavy rock. I mean, we saw the slide, we saw the numbers showing the slide, and they're seeing those too. And there's a lot of anxiety in the district with teachers, and they're working a lot of time because they know they've got a lot of work to do. And whatever we can do to offload things off of their plate, there's a lot of training and there's a lot of time out of the classroom for those coaching sessions. Let's embed that coaching within the classroom and utilize the coach as an extra pair of hands so they can kind of help control things while there is small group instruction, or maybe use that coach as to do an exemplar example of how to do certain things with the teachers, just so that you have more hands in the classroom. Because the one thing I'm worried, and the one thing we know is now the gap between the lowest learner in the class, skill group in the class, and the highest one has gotten wider. So the differentiation in that classroom has gotten a whole lot tougher. And so whatever we can to embed more resources in the classroom, if it's a plain old dad like me, or a qualified coach that also can help excel that teacher and allow that teacher to grow, I think we should throw everything we can at it. Okay. So, thanks.
you, Mr. Wilbanks. Mrs. McMurray?
Thank you. I do want to reiterate the statements of Mr. Wilbanks and Dr. Reich. I think it's critical, and the temperature check that you noted, I think that we have to stay abreast of that, because we are equipping our teachers with quality coaching, with PD, but we also need to equip them with time. And that can't just filter into outside of school. Now I'm going to start looking at my data. Now I'm going to start lesson planning. And unfortunately, I feel like we're treading past that line. And so we really need to be thoughtful in how we're supporting our teachers. Our heart is in the right place. We have ESSER funds to put that to good use, but we have to be very careful about encroaching on their conference time too much, on times that they could be pulling a small group. So I just hope that we can be thoughtful about that. And I had a question about the CBAs. Do our new literacy CBAs reflect how STAR is changing?
So we are embedding a writing component into the CBA, and we've actually altered the assessment calendar that's published to remove the standalone writing because it was redundant and not necessary. So we have had a conversation about, and we are now embedding the writing into the reading curriculum-based assessments. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant to say CAs, not CBAs.
I know
Sorry.
you were.
CAs.
Yes, the answer to your question is yes, we were doing that.
Awesome, because 4th and 7th grade, they're accustomed to seeing these revising net editing questions, but other grade levels, this is a first for them in regards to the state assessment. So we want to make sure our assessments let the students be, give the students that runway to be successful, so that when they get STAR, they're not seeing this format for the first time. And one more question about 8th grade STAR math goals. I'm looking at the 8th grade math forecast chart. I noticed that we carved out the steepest climb for ourselves in year 1. Can you kind of explain the rationale behind that?
It was really about placing, we strategically chose effect sizes towards specific years to try to get to a trajectory where you did the biggest growth at the beginning. And part of it's just this idea around when you really have a really low number, in essence, if you can just get back to teaching, you're going to see a big jump naturally happen anyways. It's almost like once you get to the higher ranks of numbers, it's the incremental changes that you're making are going to be a lot smaller. It's like going from 90 to 95 takes a lot longer. But when you're sitting in the 30s, just to get back to a baseline of even 50, the chance of seeing that growth much higher at the beginning is just simply there because you're now engaging in teaching that they didn't necessarily have in the past.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was what our discussion point was about.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate, why we all staff, board, we use the term unfinished learning because so many times we hear learning loss, and we're talking about our own children and our teachers that we serve. And you can't lose something you never had in the first place. Our kids are bright, they are capable, they are resilient, our teachers are talented, and more important, they're caring. And I'm just very optimistic. When I look at these goals, I know we can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McMurray. Ms. Fowler, you good?
Yes.
Okay, just make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, I do not see any additional questions from my colleagues. I just have one question. Was there a slide that you showed where we did not get back to our baseline in 5 years?
There was one that we had in here. It was, I want to say this one, Algebra 1. And we'll reevaluate that one. I noticed that one as we were going through, and I can't tell you why. Do you? It's an error. It's an error? Okay. That's an error.
All right.
So
good.
I will send you the correct one.
Okay. Good answer.
President Mays?
Yes, Mrs. Fowler?
I did have a couple of comments if we have time.
Yes.
All right. So I wanted to ask, one thing that concerns me is that word acceleration. And I know it's about catching up and moving forward quickly, but it just worries me that we're trying to accelerate the students and the teachers maybe a little too quickly. And I know we're worried about the time out of the classroom and trying to catch up, but I would, slow and steady wins the race. And I would rather have us slow down and let the teachers feel comfortable, let the students feel comfortable, rather than trying to move too quickly to catch everyone up. So I think that's something that we need to focus on, that, sometimes it's okay to take a step back and slow down and make sure that everyone is on the same baseline and can move through. So that concerns me a little bit. But I also wanted to mention this probably would be a great time for us to look at our retired teachers, see if they're, ready, willing, and able to come back in the classroom and help the teachers. So this might be a good time for us to kind of tap into that group of teachers to see who's available to help us with the tutoring and or coaching.
Thank you. Yeah, we agree.
Thank you, Mrs. Fowler. Okay, so this was a discussion action item. So, Mr. Wilbanks?
I'd like to make a motion on our HB3 goals that we're required, that we're being asked to revise and adopt tonight. And I move that we adopt the revised HB3 goals and the progress measures and the monitoring calendar as presented, with the additional goals of the 8th grade math, vital elevated to an HB3 goal for the board, and also 9th grade reading.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, so without a second, that motion fails. Are you pushing your button, Mr. Chapa? There you go. Mr. Chapa?
Thank you, President Mays. I'd like to ask Mr. Wilbanks to explain his motion. It's got some things in there that I understand really well and was prepared for, and some things that I'm not.
So under HB3, we're required to adopt at a minimum the 3 goals that were presented in his HB3 section, in addition to adopt the monitoring calendar and the progress measures that were presented to us. And then in addition to what was presented, I elevated the vitals that were in the DIP presentation for 8th grade math and 9th grade reading to an HB3 goal that we're adopting to be posted along with our other HB3 goals to our website.
You still,
Thank you.
yeah, you still have the mic.
So that, let me ask Dr. Wirtz. Dr. Wirtz, were those things that were intentionally not elevated to HB3 goals, and I assume that's not part of the administration's recommendation, and what's the rationale for not doing that?
They're included in the district improvement plan recommendation, so that was the only reason. House Bill 3 is primarily focused on primary grades, and so the recommendation was focused around primary grades in grade level 3. But because the vitals that are being described impact the district improvement plan targets of reading and math, the proposal was to bring those vitals to you in terms of a progress calendar in connection to DIP, which we will do also with House Bill 3. So they're happening simultaneously, but they're 2 separate things.
So help me understand what the effect of Mr. Wilbanks' motion would be if it was adopted. What would be different in the way that you would approach this, or the district would be affected?
Well, House Bill 3 House Bill 3 is primarily around 3rd grade. And so the targets that are connected to House Bill 3 for primary grades are, to your point earlier, Ms. McMurrow, are designed to show a thread for how kids are progressing towards that outcome of 3rd grade. 8th and 9th are beyond 3rd grade. Nothing that happens in 8th and 9th impacts 3rd grade. And so, but we feel like they're really important, like in terms of inclusion towards the overall district average. And so the district improvement plan target around reading and math are impacted by both of those two targets that he's describing. And so that's the reason why they were included in the district improvement plan portion. But in terms of month to month, we will be presenting both of those items to you, whether they're under the district improvement plan or they're House Bill 3, they're embedded in the progress monitoring calendar. So you will see us sharing you outcomes and progress towards 8th grade math as it would land on the outcome on the calendar, and it'll probably happen simultaneously when something from House Bill 3 is occurring. So in terms of your day-to-day life, we'll share them at the same time as presented. We just proposed that they were housed under two different places, but that was the reason why we did it.
So,
Okay, so so why does that need to be different?
So, Mr. Chapa, if I will, so with the HB3, to clarify, the law says that those three goals, third grade reading, third grade math, and CCMR, are the minimum that we have to adopt as a board, but we can adopt others, and that whatever HB3 goals we adopt as a board must be included in the superintendent's evaluation and also in our strategic plan. And the idea is that our strategic plan, the superintendent's evaluation, and these goals are all tightly aligned. And in addition, the monitoring of these goals have to be published to our website and to show the importance. And since my reasoning is since the drop on 8th grade math, 9th grade reading, I just include for consistency, but specifically because of the precipitous drop in 8th grade math scores, I felt we as a board, that's something we should keep a close eye on, is our progress towards that. And that's why I think it's important for us as a board and to elevate at least that one, if not the 9th grade reading as well, as one of our board adopted goals, and to be published to our website with the transparency, and also then by default, it's also included in the evaluation for the superintendent.
Is this information not going to be available on the website if it's not elevated to an HB3 goal?
Well, we post the district improvement plan to the website, and we can post anything. So all these targets, including vitals, if that's the desire of the board to post to the website, we can do that.
Well, and it sounds also like if you're reporting to us on a regular basis that these presentations will be posted online as part of the board materials, no?
That's correct.
And okay, and we were presented with a lot of slides that show precipitous drops in achievement scores, so it's interesting to just pick some more when there are many more, and the superintendent's evaluation is holistic for student achievement for across the board. So I don't know why there would be a practical change in how we operate if we do what you're saying.
I don't think it would be a change at all, but you know, 8th grade is an important vital, and it is the spirit of HB3 was for us as a board to pick those goals we felt as important as a board to monitor at our level, to hold the district accountable for progress. And given the importance, I think at least the 8th grade math, which other districts have also adopted as part of their HB3 goals, I think would be appropriate in this case for us to do the same.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Hogg?
Thank you, President Mays. And Ms. Woolmakes, I understand your goal on this, and I probably don't disagree with it. I would disagree with the process. So all these, as Mr. Chapa said, everything's going to be judged on student achievement and for our superintendent goals. As we're finalizing, I think these three are the critical pieces of that HB3. And I understand you're trying to go above, and I think we are going above with all these. I would say I'm probably leaning towards adopt these three, adopt our DIP plan on that, as we're working through and still finalizing, we can always add more coming in. And I'm pretty sure, I think that 8th grade piece is the right one. We're judging it. It's also judged with multiple other things in that grouping, which I think are critical factors for us to be able to judge. But as we add like portfolio graduate or something like that, we can add those up to those HB3s if you want. I don't think you have to do it right now on a spur of the moment to add those increase. Would just be my opinion on that. I'm not saying they're not the right ones. I would say let's advise it. They're still getting approved. I think Mr. Chop asked the question, which I agree with, and Dr. Wirtz has heard it. We want all these posted to the website. These are all going to be part of our progress monitoring reports. They're all board goals. They're all board and district goals, and they're all going to be tracked. I do probably agree with the way they're broken up. So I would support doing it as the recommendation of what we see in our document.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Dr. Reich?
And thank you, President Mays. Yeah, I essentially agree with what Mr. Hogg stated and Mr. Choppa's line of questioning. Mr. Wilbanks, I do appreciate where you're going and recognizing that other districts have included some of these things. I have a different view as far as HB3. HB3 was put out there from the state level because, quite frankly, there were a lot of districts that weren't doing anything like this. And this district has done an excellent job over the years of creating valid campus improvement plans and aligning them with the district improvement plans that were so far ahead of what other districts were doing. So when HB3 came about with these requirements, quite honestly, to me, it was a little bit of a yawn because I thought, we're already doing that stuff. So we already have it tied in, and we can discuss our board goals specifically and tie it into the superintendent's evaluation matrix, et cetera. So I think it really is more of a reporting mechanism. We are going to see it all, and I think the monitoring, progress monitoring and reporting to us is appropriate. So I just wanted to explain that. We have, as Arlington ISD has over many years, we have led the pack. And this is one of those areas where we have been leading the pack for quite a while, much different than when I first came on this board, when it was a checkbox for campus improvement, district improvement, and there wasn't any structure, there wasn't any consistency, there wasn't any follow through on what worked and what didn't work from year previous to current and then moving forward. And that quickly evolved into the system that is there today, and that was well before HB3. So that's why, to me, I don't think it's a necessary thing to have to put in there. Where the same level of accountability that we hold this administration to is not changed. So I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reich. Mr. Wilbanks?
Well, and thank you for the feedback from my colleagues. It is important if we think we can have the same level of visibility and the ability to monitor our progress on that specific level and possibly revisit in terms of elevating later. I would certainly be open to that, and I would like to modify my motion to move the.
It's a new motion.
Sorry. I'd like to make a new motion that we adopt the revised HB3 goals as our board adopted goals, along with the progress measures presented and the proposed monitoring calendar.
Okay. Got a motion by Mr. Wilbanks. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Choppa. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, I vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, yes.
Justin Choppa, I vote yes.
Okay. Motion passes in the affirmative. Thank you very much, Dr. Wirtz. Appreciate the conversation. Okay, our next discussion, action.
Are we also needing to adopt the
Oh.
DIP?
Okay. Mrs. McMurray?
I also want to make a motion, President Mays. I would like to move to adopt the 2021-2022 District Improvement Plan, performance objectives as presented.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mrs. McMurray, a second by Mr. Hogg. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, I vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Louis Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes in the affirmative. Thank you again, Dr. Wertz. Okay, our next discussion action item is COVID-19 school operation update. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays, and as has been routine now, we bring a COVID update for the board, operation update, just where we stand and the efforts of not only testing, but where the numbers stand. So, Dr. Hill.
Greetings. We're back to, again, do the school operations update, and if I could get the slide to advance. All right, just an overview. We'll talk about the vaccine and testing and mitigation efforts. We'll talk about current countywide conditions, the AISD dashboard, our AISD weekly trends. We'll take a look at that. Take a look at our test center data from 604 New York, as well as the Tarrant County test site at our athletics arena. Then we'll look at the virtual school update and a remote learning resolution as a part of what we're asking for this evening. So that being said, we'll just get right into it. The vaccine clinic that was held on September 17th here within the district provided first and second doses as well as booster doses for those that wanted to. Although it was a limited turnout, it did impact those that took advantage of it. We still have that vaccine location at the Arlington Fire Department here on 2920 South Cooper still available. We're still encouraging staff to go there as their schedule allows and they decide to make that choice. We are been in communication with local and county health officials to say that we are interested in a district vaccine clinic for when that the vaccine becomes available for those that are younger and the parents are wanting to do that. The testing mitigation efforts, the countywide drive-through test center is still open at our athletic complex Tuesdays through Saturdays, and it began on September 28th. Just a little data. Through October 9th, we've had 312 tests administered there, and you can see the numbers of the ones that were detected COVID, no detected, and inconclusive, and the specimen unsatisfactory. Those are data that just comes straight from the county that they provide to us, and I'm just sharing it with you here. With our clinic at 604 New York, again, that's Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and test data from the first day we opened it back in August through October 12th, we've tested 1,248 students and staff, and you can see the numbers of the positive cases and the negative cases there. Other mitigation efforts that we have in place, we continue to strongly encourage the students and staff to wear the mask, and we continue to require symptomatic individuals to stay home and get tested until they can determine exactly what their symptoms are. This is the next few slides are strictly from Tarrant County's website, and this slide just wanted to highlight that at still this level, at this time in the county, the level of spread is still considered high. The next slide shows the vaccination by county and by city, and so this one shows the call out in the graph to the right. The city of Arlington is above 50% of the eligible citizens have been vaccinated within the city of Arlington, and I think it's at 53% at this time. This slide shows that the positivity rate is beginning to trend down. And again, this is reported from the county's website. And this one here, the weekly positivity rate, again, that's continued to trend down as well. our dashboard through October the 12th, and these are just positive cases reported from when we started back on, I think, the first day of school through October the 12th. We had 458 staff members test positive, 2,799 students test positive, and 11 visitors test positive. And again, this information is on the district's dashboard, and it's updated every day at 5 p.m. And this graph here just shows the trends, and these are the week ending. And so you can see that we capture this data every Friday, and you can see that the weeks are, the numbers are continuing to trend down, which matches what we're seeing with the county as well. Now we'll jump into some virtual school numbers. You know, we have virtual school opportunities for the elementary grades, and currently there are 1,000, or as of October the 10th, when we took this data, there were 1,127 elementary students enrolled in virtual. We're continuing to monitor that and survey the parents for their interests, those parents that are within the virtual, for their interests moving forward. And as that number fluctuates, we'll continue to evaluate our staffing and make adjustments as necessary. And then the third 6 weeks starts on November the 1st, and then that would be the next opportunity that we would make some adjustments based on parents' choice at that time. And then the last thing we'll cover is a resolution for remote learning. I think you've had an opportunity to look at this resolution. It's required by the state that the board adopt a resolution for remote learning. We've been in this virtual setting, and we've been here again since September the 7th. Our elementary students have been taking advantage of this. This resolution allows us to retrieve or receive ADA or funding for students that are in the virtual environment. And then again, we're taking that attendance every day for those students, face-to-face, virtual attendance, but we're seeing them on the cameras where they're not in the school. So that's how we're trying to, that's how we're capturing attendance. And so, again, our next steps would be, once, if this resolution is approved, then we would take the steps to receive our ADA as required by TEA. So we recommend that the board adopt the resolution authorizing AISD for remote learning program as it's described. And again, you've had an opportunity to look at that, and we'll field any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Mr. Chapa?
Thank you, President Mays. Dr. Hill, on the remote learning resolution, is the ADA funding retroactive to when we began offering virtual learning, or is it only on a go-forward basis?
It's retro to when we begin it.
That's great, because correct me if I'm wrong, we've been paying that out of ourselves with no state help this whole time, right?
To this point, yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. On the virtual learning program that we have in place, I just want to be clear, is the intention to continue the virtual program through the semester, or is it something that could change in the third 6 weeks?
So I think you want to take.
Yeah, that's, we committed to evaluating every 6 weeks the continuation of a virtual program. The numbers are strong, but we're just asking now for the third 6 weeks. Assuming the numbers are strong, then we will continue to offer it. That's probably the simplest way of answering it. If there's a drastic change, we may consider altering some of that. But I think today, there's a safe assumption that the numbers will be pretty strong going into the third 6 weeks. But to be clear, this was an option that we surfaced and that we brought forward. Until numbers started dropping, and we have other mitigating factors like possibly a vaccine for this age group, then that would be the next things that we would consider in discontinuing the virtual. We all know that the strongest place for a student to be, for the most part, for most students, is in front of a teacher in a classroom. But we know this is an important option, so we're trying to balance that. So I anticipate the numbers will be strong and will continue to the third 6 weeks. If there's a drastic change, then we'll have to evaluate that.
Okay, those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Mrs. Fowler, I'm making sure that you're not raising your hand. Dr. Hill is so tall, I can't even see your face. Okay, very good. Don't want to exclude you. I don't see any other questions from my colleagues. I would like to say, Dr. Hill, I have heard from many parents who have really appreciated the option of virtual. I'm hoping that we may not be required to ever have to go back to having to do this, but I would like to know that the district has made some notes, once again, of how things have gone as we've tried to transition into virtual, pay attention to some of the feedback that we have gotten from parents of things that may not been as smooth as we wanted them to go, so that if we do either continue or have to do it again, that we're even at a better place than we were this time, like we were at a better place than we were prior to that. So thank you. Mr. Chapa does have a question and/or comment. Mr. Chapa?
Yeah, thank you, President Mays. I did forget one thing. Could you just explain, because the conversation around the SB 15 bill has been directly, tied to our COVID-related virtual learning effort. Could you go into a little bit more detail about why the SB 15 virtual learning option is going to be more important for us, in the long run going forward with different educational options that we can offer students? Because this is something, I'll just stop there and let you explain.
Yeah, so we're pretty optimistic on the post-COVID opportunity to offer virtual learning. It's probably the easiest way of saying it. To offer virtual learning, not for a pandemic reason or health reason or otherwise. To be able to offer some virtual learning that could be a blended instruction, where you come sometimes to the school, sometimes at home, where it's not related to a pandemic. We could offer courses, like high school courses, some specifically online, virtual. Those are real big possibilities to serve our students in different ways. We know it's not for everyone. It's like taking an online course in college or otherwise. Not everybody likes to do that. Not everybody can be successful. But for some, it's really, really impactful. It also allows schedules to work for students who want to do internships and other things like that. So a lot of possibility on that. But I always try to make the distinction. It's a post-COVID discussion because it would be for meeting somebody's needs academically and not trying to deal with a pandemic at the same time and creating something that's so standard that maybe loses some of that opportunity for students to actually take full advantage of. So we're actively reviewing those opportunities for a post-COVID world where we can engage students in different ways, flexible scheduling, so that they can take advantage of more career tech courses and things like that. A lot of possibility there, so we're appreciative of that. But it just doesn't really apply too well when you try to distinguish all that during a time like this.
Right, and that's one reason I meant to ask a question and then I forgot, but I wanted to draw that out because even though it's at the end of our COVID-related presentation, this is a thing that is not just related to COVID. It's going to pay dividends for us over the long term, and it's actually, to give credit to the board, this is something that was included in our legislative agenda this year that we adopt every year. It was specifically included as a talking point when the governance committee and then other members of the board, every year we meet. This year it was virtually with our local legislative delegation, but this came up in every conversation that we had with our local legislative delegation, and we pushed hard for the legislature to get a bill like this passed. And the virtual learning bill actually died the last night that the legislature was in session, but did get passed in a special session. And so this, has a lot of promise going forward. We do know students had some challenges during virtual learning during COVID, but some had successes. But even moving beyond that, this gives us a lot of options for students who want a virtual learning experience that districts previously were not allowed to provide. There were a limited number of providers across the state that could enroll students virtually. There was the Virtual School Network, which is a statewide network. There was a limited number of virtual charters, but this allows school districts to have parity with those programs now, so a district doesn't have to leave the AISD to have a virtual experience. They can have both an in-person and virtual experience. Going forward, we'll have opportunities for them to do that, and it's going to be, I think, the right thing for quite a few of our students. Even if they're not entirely virtual, it might be the right thing to take a virtual course here or there to give them some flexibility during the day to take more electives or work in a job or anything like that. So I just wanted to draw that out because it is separate from the COVID discussion, even though it is part of the COVID presentation tonight.
Yeah, Mr. Chopin, I appreciate some of those words, and even still to hold that idea out for even gap closing. I mean, there may be a way where this may be very beneficial for closing gap for certain students and/or certain subject matters. Okay, so there was a recommendation, and this is a discussion action item. Do I have a motion? For the resolution? Well, I don't think there was any recommendations made about the COVID update. I just, yes, yes. Thank you. Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Mays. Yes, I was just waiting till we got to that right point, and appreciate the comments and appreciate this board's work over the past several years as far as legislative advocacy for a remote learning opportunity. The virtual school network was the only thing for so many years, and we've been pushing and pushing that we could really make a lot of hay for our students and their achievement. So I'm glad that it's there, glad that the opportunity presents itself through this resolution. This will allow the legal modality for us to be able to be compensated to do that instead of self-funding, so that's great. So I'll read this resolution, so bear with me for just a few moments. Resolution of the board regarding local remote learning program. Whereas pursuant to Education Code 29.9091, a district may operate a local remote learning program in accordance with the statutory requirements. Whereas pursuant to Education Code 25.9091C, a district offering a local remote learning program may provide a virtual course through remote synchronous instruction, asynchronous instruction, or a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction, and proposed amendments to the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook provide that a board-approved local policy determines which instructional methods and attendance-taking methods the district will use. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Arlington Independent School District, through this resolution, which has the effect of board-adopted policy, approves the following provisions. The board authorizes the district to operate a local remote learning program as permitted by law and employ the following instructional and attendance-taking methods in providing its remote learning program. Remote synchronous instruction beginning September 7th, 2021, with daily attendance taken at 9:50 a.m. The authority granted by this resolution shall apply for the 2021-2022 school year unless the board takes further action adopted this 14th day of October 21 by the Board of Trustees. So I move with that the board adopts this resolution as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Chapa. Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mr. Chapa. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, I vote yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Okay, motion passes in the affirmative. Thank you again, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
Okay, next thing on our agenda is our consent agenda. So we will now address those items which consist of routine items that are grouped together for approval as one item. Unless removed from the consent agenda, these items will be acted on at one time with no discussion. Trustees, are there any requests for items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, I see none. So is there a motion to accept the agenda?
Move for approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Mr. Wilbanks. Any discussion?
By Dr. Reich. Second by Dr. Reich.
Second by Dr. Reich. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Chapa?
Thank you, President Mays. I know we normally don't have discussion on consent agenda items, but as consent agenda item F, I don't want to fly under the radar, and if Dr. Cavazos or Ms. Moss or Dr. Hill would like to talk about it more, they can, or I can just quickly summarize. But what consent agenda item F does is a significant pay raise for our auxiliary staff in our educational aides, especially in those entry-level positions. This is a discussion that we had during budget in the spring and summer, and the administration, we made great progress with our educator pay and professional pay, but there was a commitment by the administration to continue studying this specific category of employees to make sure that they are not just competitive with what other school districts are paying, but competitive within the market. And so within here are some substantial hourly pay increases for some of our hourly employees and students, some of the positions who work very closely with our students, educational aides, and keep our campuses running, janitors and food service staff, help us with our recruitment efforts and retention efforts as well. And I wanted to thank the administration for, this is a very strong commitment. There are some categories that are seeing on an hourly basis, more than a 10% raise. And so I do think it's significant, and wanted to commend the administration for an aggressive proposal on this front and not let that go unnoticed.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Okay, so we have, once again, our motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Dr. Reich. We've had our discussion. Let's vote. Mrs. Fowler?
Melody Fowler, I vote yes.
Aaron Reich, vote yes.
David Wilbanks, I vote yes.
Bowie Hogg, I vote yes.
Keisha Mays, I vote yes.
Sarah McMurrow, I vote yes.
Justin Chapa, I vote yes.
Motion passes in the affirmative. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is our discussion item, safety and security update. Dr. Cavazos?
Thank you, President Mays, and we bring forward today a safety and security update. This is an item that we surface to make sure that we calibrate, but also are aware of our safety and security measures that we have in our schools. Albeit this is a high-level review or update, and I'll just preface it, but I'll refer to it if we get to those kind of questions. There are some things related to our safety and security that we will not be able to discuss publicly, and that is so that we can continue our safety measures and not compromise any of those. So some of the things in great detail will not be discussed, and I want to preface that we're not skimming through a presentation, we're just trying to not compromise our own protocols by discussing them too much publicly. Otherwise, Dr. Hill will lead us through a presentation. I think David Stevens is also here, our Director of Security, so you'll introduce him, I'm sure, Dr. Hill, so please proceed.
Thank you. So I'm back, and I'll start by introducing two gentlemen that just walked in, David Stevens, a Director of Security, and Lieutenant Jonathan Grant Brooks with the Arlington Police Department. He supervises a school resource officer, and I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Just a little bit of update on what we're going to do, things that we're going to cover, AISD website and parent notifications. We're going to cover what the difference between a lockdown and a lockout is. We'll cover reporting of bullying and what the district's procedures are for that. Cover Crime Stoppers and just a little bit of data on that, and then random safety drills that we have, and then we'll just open for some questions at the end that may be there. So when events happen, we've got a communications department that works very closely with our campuses, and parent notifications are sent out through the district Facebook page, through the campus Facebook page. We do updates on Twitter. We'll send out notifications through Blackboard. The AISD website will put that pop-up there, and it'll just take over when there's an event that needs to go out. The district website and the campus website. And then we'll follow up with final messaging, whatever that may be, whether it's next steps or an all clear. So all of that's part of that communication plan that goes out. We'll talk just a little bit about what a lockdown is versus what a lockout is. So if we use the term lockout, in general, that simply means that there's been an identified threat or situation that is occurring off campus, but it doesn't pose immediate threat to the campus at that time, but it could at any point. So when we use those terms, what we want campuses to do, or what they do automatically, is they'll cancel all outside activities, move kids to the inside, secure perimeter doors and classroom doors. They can continue in teaching inside the classroom unless directed otherwise, but they do limit movement within the building. And we've talked about this in practices with our staff, and so they understand what this is. When we hear the term lockdown, that means that the threat is on campus or very near campus, and it poses direct and immediate danger to the campus. The campus actions when we go into a lockdown It is begin the notification procedures that we talked about a minute ago. At the PD, they are on their way. And we activate what we call our LACE lock procedures, which is an internal document that talks about how we go into lockdown. It's important that we distinguish what those two are because they are stark differences. When we get reports of bullying, we've got a procedure on our website, and it's on the Counselor Connection, and it's on another couple of locations for parent resources. And this just gives the students who are potentially victims of bullying or cyberbullying or abuse or anything, just gives them the steps by which they can take to report that. And then any and all of those reports, once we get them, are thoroughly investigated and followed through in a timely manner. But those investigations are very detailed. We rely heavily on Crime Stoppers. This is posted in all of our schools. It's on our website, and I'll show you some data here in a second that just kind of tells how much we rely on that and how it can be. It's proven to be very, very beneficial into us keeping our campuses as safe as possible. From August 16th through October 12th of this year, we've received 42 tips from Crime Stoppers. Just looking at last year, because we were mostly virtual, we only received 22 tips throughout the entire year. But if you look at the last full year, August 19th of 2019 through May of 2020, we received 114 tips for Crime Stoppers. And those tips, they run the gamut from you name it to some of the things that you haven't thought of. And they come through with students, they come through with parents, they come through with community members. And so we work with the PD and our security department and the campus administration to jump on those and get those investigated as quickly as possible. We also conduct what we call random metal detector exercises. They conducted monthly in our secondary schools. We may hit 12 to 15 classes per month, just random. And we run through those exercises, checking for the obvious and the not so obvious, and those have proven to be successful for us. We also conduct random school bus checks. We'll have our security team at a high school, you name it, at 6:30 in the morning when the first bus rolls up. Kids don't know it, and they're jumping off the bus, and they go right through this exercise. And so we try to keep it random to make sure that we are not setting patterns, but keeping our campuses safe. We also contract with the K-9 units in the area to do classroom searches random, as well as parking lots and parking vehicles as well. This is what we've always talked about, especially with our efforts with our campus administration, our district support, our police department, is that school safety is collective responsibility, and it's all of ours. And we are working to make sure that we continue to have that as a priority for us as we work. So it's a responsibility of all of ours. So with that being said, I'm here to entertain any questions that you may have or any comments that.
Yeah, and a few comments. Thank you, Dr. Hill. I will say that a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Arlington Police Department. They work very closely with us, and we have a great partnership with them. I think that it goes without saying that we've worked many years together and continue to refine our processes. David Stevens, who came from the Arlington Police Department, thank you for your leadership with all our security efforts. David has a wealth of information and knowledge, both tactical and strategic, and I'm just so proud of him, and I'm glad he's on our team. I will say that as we talk about communication, just a couple of brief comments here, that important during a time of an emergency or a time of a crisis or a time of a lockdown or lockout, that the information, that we're efficient with providing that information. And I always remind the public, different groups I speak with, that you want to hear the information from us because there's a lot of traffic on social media. And you want the official information from the school district because that provides the most timely and also the most accurate information. And I commend Anita Foster, who leads that effort, for that communication being seamless and getting better and better, always ways we can improve that. And then finally, the biggest point I think is we often think of safety and security as very tactical, and it is. We have buzzer systems to come into our schools. You know, you ring the doorbell and things like that to come in. You have to announce who you are. We have Raptor checks and all that. And all those things, random metal detectors. And those are really, really important. But the other piece sometimes we don't talk about is the culture of a school. And that starts with leadership and the teachers, many of the people we talked about tonight with goals and all that. The culture of the school is really important in safety because the culture of the school practices, understands, makes it a routine, takes it seriously, takes the right actions. We just highlighted a brief with the Crime Stoppers, but our students provide a lot of information that's happening in the schools. And that happens with a positive culture at the campus. It doesn't just happen. You have to keep cultivating that. So I thank our principals because they're in the front lines, if you will, on this safety and security at the campus level. And they generate that culture so that the students tell us, the students cooperate with us, et cetera, so that we mitigate as much of the threat as possible. So Dr. Hill, thank you for your leadership in our overall safety and security for our school district. I just wanted to make those comments for context.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Mrs. McMurrow?
Yes, Dr. Hill, thank you for your presentation and for your efforts and staff efforts and APD's efforts in keeping our kids safe. It's number one. I just wanted to quickly reiterate to any parents that are watching, any family members that are watching, please make sure that your phone numbers and your contact information is up to date in Teams. Because I know you mentioned this, Dr. Cavazos, the last way you want to learn of an incident happening at your child's campus is on social media. And unfortunately, I've heard that that's occurred recently. And, sometimes it's something as simple as, oh, I got a new cell phone number and I haven't registered my child since July, so I need to just let the front office know my new phone numbers. And so I just wanted to quickly reiterate that. It takes 5 minutes, and then we have that number locked in. I personally make sure that the school has all the numbers, my phone, my cell phone, my husband's cell phone, our work phones, because the more avenues a staff member can take to contact you, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McMurrow. Mr. Hogg?
Yeah, thank you, President Mays, and I'll be quick. And Lieutenant Brooks and David Stevens, thank you for all the work y'all do. There's so much that goes into it that we don't really talk about here. The amount of briefings we've had over the years are important, as Dr. Cavazos said, adding vestibules, buzzers, things that are basic things, and they're not just about weapons in school. It's about child predators, things of those nature that occur. Dr. Hill, remind me how often each school does lockdown practices, fire drills, et cetera.
So it's a good question. There's different requirements. So there's a fire drill every month that we're in school more than 10 days or 10 days or more. And then I don't have the numbers with me right now, but we do like lockdown drill once every 12 weeks. And then severe weather drills, we have a number of, so we are up to date on all of those, but I don't have the specifics, but those are.
I just know those are required. I've seen those numbers before, and I didn't remember exactly what they were. And Dr. Hill, let me just make a comment. And I know in this economy right now, hiring security guards is difficult. It's very hard. I know we're increasing on that to hire. I would just say from a board standpoint, those are critical items. So what we need to do, we get done. I know we've talked about that a lot with health insurance. We lose security guards plain and simple because of health insurance offerings from where they go. So the more we can do in that, because they are critically to our teachers, sometimes the first line of a deterrent. And I think deterrent's the right word there, and then can be that critical factor to help us on there. And then the last piece, I think you mentioned it's not giving away any strategy. We know student notification is probably one of the best defenses, having students notify us. And we see this from Crime Stoppers. We see that you walk into any school, you usually see multiple things of notification on that. From my perspective on the board, and I have a feeling my colleagues would agree, the more we increase that and the easier accessible we did, and also making sure we're adapting to student technology. What's the easiest way for them to notify us? How's the fastest way? Because the best defense is hearing it. And we get reports from parents, we get them from students, like, hey, my student said this has happened, we send it to you guys, and we know how fast y'all react and respond. So I just say this from a priority of the board is the more we can do student notification and encourage students know what's going on most of the time. They are very knowledgeable. Social media is very difficult to track all those things that are on there, and students say a lot of things, and they tell friends, and having students notified. And that's not just safety. That is a bullying issue. That's all kinds of issues that students help that. So I just think with my colleagues and all time, I think no one would probably disagree that the more we increase that, the better. And I would just encourage that. And that's all I have to say. And I'll thank those gentlemen and yourself, Dr. Hill, for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Dr. Reich?
Thank you, President Mays. Yes, thank you for the information. Thank you to gentlemen for what you do. For many years, we have gone through a continual tweak and update and movement forward for making our campuses as secure as possible. And as Dr. Cavazos spoke to, it's not just about the hardening of the facility, which is absolutely essential, but it is also about the culture and mental health and anti-bullying programs and education. We've done so many things in this district. It's really something that I won't pull sources out as far as names, but I've been told on very high authority by very high-ranking first responder professionals in our community within our Tarrant County realm that we have one of the best, if not the best, comprehensive approach to safety and security. And that is fantastic. It really is. With working with all of our law enforcement professionals, APD, and our first responders with AFD and what they do, they are in communication and lauded nationally. They are working in concert with the FBI. It's both police and fire because of so many high-profile events that we have in Arlington. We have such a great collaborative relationship with them, and I just want to thank you. I put that out there with unfortunate recent events that have happened in our city. It's so important to share with the community that we don't take anything for granted. We've been on this for years, and the ball is always moving. And from a culture standpoint and a student standpoint, we went through a few years where it's taxing on our first responders to have to address some of these things that some cases students put out on social media. They don't have any intent, but the police have to follow through as make sure, is this a credible threat or not? And those students get their consequences. And I appreciate that that's one more aspect of making sure, as far as a culture, see something, say something, that is part of everybody's vernacular. It's so important. It does stop, it does mitigate, it does keep our safety and security in check. So I'm just so appreciative. Look forward to continual updates, and know that there are things that we don't know that are going on with our very good relationship with the police department that we don't need to know. But there's a lot of moving parts, and our partnerships that we have at the county level and in Tarrant County Mental Health, MHMR, we have a lot of resources. So it's wonderful to see where we are, and I just say that because in light of things that have happened in our city, whether it was in this district or not, it's our city, it's our community, and we all have to band together and do what we can to not only know that we've got this, but also that we've got to continue on this with our students. We have to love on them. We have to work on their culture. There are so many situations in personal lives where the students come in and they go through situations that none of us would have ever imagined, no matter what our backgrounds are. And they do that, and they come to school. And our teachers are there working through all of those social issues as well. And there's so many that would say, schools don't need to worry about that, just worry about making sure they can read and write. Well, guess what? It's not been that way for a long time, and it is our responsibility. It's our responsibility as a community to band together. So if you have kids in school or not, if you see something, let the school know. And I put it out there that way as well. If you think it's something that's emergent, yes, go to the professionals and call the police, but go to the school first. Don't go to social media. That is one of our, social media is good, but it's also the wrong direction, and it's put so much energy, negative energy, into something that doesn't need to be. That's pretty much it. I have one clarification on the communication strategies that you outlined. I didn't see the emergency text notification. Is that still something that we're doing? It just wasn't listed as one of the bullets. I assume it is.
It is.
Okay, yeah, just making sure. Not having kids in the system, I don't know these things anymore. So I figured with Ms. McMurrow's comments that that's probably the case, but I just wanted to verify that. So thank you again, gentlemen, for what you do, and it's the entire district effort, so I appreciate it, and look forward to, for those that don't know, here in the audience, we get updates every year, but in certain times and situations, we step it up a little bit, and with the events that have happened recently in our community, it's very important that we have a quick review of this, so thank you, Dr. Cavazos, for doing it.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Mrs. Fowler, you're good? Okay.
If I could,
Absolutely.
But we have our schools in AISD, but we have other police agencies too that I want to recognize. With these gentlemen, they constantly forge relationships with DWG and Grand Prairie, and so those schools that are in those cities, they have the same level of support and same level of partnerships for these efforts. So.
Thank you. I can personally concur. Thank you very much, Dr. Hill. One short thing that I just want to add, in addition to police department and our security team, I also want to just say thank you to our teachers and the staff there in the building who have relationships with these students, who sometimes have that first eye that something's different, something's going on, and or have the respect of a student to tell them things that they may not otherwise say. So I hope that there's still continual training, still continual things to do supporting our teachers that are also that second set of eyes when things are kind of going awry. So thank y'all very much. Thank you to Dr. Hill. Okay, next thing on our agenda is our open forum for non-agenda items. As stated on the posted agenda, members of the public who desire to address the board regarding an item on this agenda are required to register. I will continue, except it's non-agenda items. So, Mrs. Benjamin, do we have any requesters registered to address the board regarding non-agenda items?
Yes, President Mays, we have 9 registered for non-agenda items this evening.
Okay. So I have a list of names here. As I call your name, if you would please come and speak. You have 2 minutes to speak. When your time is up, Mrs. Benjamin will notify you, and please discontinue speaking at that time. So the first name that I have is Jillian Lemons. Lemons? Lemons. It was that jazz music. You may start.
The duty of loyalty requires board members to prioritize the interests of the public above their own interests. The board needs to be seen as a valuable resource, legitimate, and credible. Credibility occurs when the board appears knowledgeable, trustworthy, fair, and rational. My concern today is the lack of credibility that the AISD has shown over the last year. While the district is celebrating the special ed department's largest homecoming month, amongst other activities, Arlington taxpayers are wondering what exactly is the focus of the district. Are we focused on the fact that we have over 100 openings for classroom teachers? Are we actively working on a strategy for recruiting and retaining qualified educators within the district? My child had 10 different subs in 10 days this year. Are we focused on the fact that we have not completed items from the 2014 bond, such as lighting in the junior high athletic fields? Or are we hyper-focused on building a new stadium at Martin High School? Stadium lighting is against code in every neighborhood with a junior high, but not in Martin High School's neighborhood. Miraculously, with LED technology, this is okay. Are we focused on strategically not paying our debts, or are we focused on finding a solution so we can move forward with our 2019 bond? AISD is engaging in a public and costly legal battle aimed to cripple a local business, RJ Construction. Yet the AISD finds it reasonable to pay an ethically questionable Dallas attorney millions to pursue bankrupting this local business. The tactic will affect the progress of the bond. What company will want to do business with AISD? How many have already pulled their bids? AISD is distracted from their mission of empowering and engaging all students to be contributing, responsible citizens. How can I view you all as a credible source and entrust you with my most precious children when I don't feel like you are following your own obligations as a board and a district? I, along with many others, cannot trust you. I, like many others, are considering alternatives to AISD. I feel like y'all have lost your way.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pay RJ Construction.
Our next speaker is Brandy Daniels. Brandy Daniels. Okay, our next speaker is Bain Perez. Okay. Our next speaker is Tim Dagg, if I pronounced your last name correctly. Dagg. Mr. Dagg. Uh-huh.
I would like to discuss tonight some questions about the 2019 bond. Looking at the AISD webpage, it appears we are lacking construction bids for our various projects within Phase 1. To that point, I need to ask this first. Where has the money gone from the $663 million 2014 bond? In early 2021, we had several companies that were to be paid with that 2014 bond money that had not been paid for work completed for AISD. Work completed years before the 2019 bond. This makes me question why you asked for over $1 billion in the 2019 bond. Is that designed to pay for what we owe on the previous bond shortcomings? A construction company named Balfour Beatty built all 6 MACs, 2 elementary schools, and the CTC, finished them in May of 2017. In the 2021 June board meeting agenda, you are discussing paying Balfour Beatty in settlement behind closed doors for work they finished in May of 2017. This is 5 years after the work was finished. Wildstone, Size Love, North Star, Miller, Sierra, and Balfour Beatty were construction companies for the 2014 bond projects that were slow paid, forced into penny on the dollar settlements such as Balfour Beatty, or possibly not paid at all. Let me ask this, how, or better yet, why did Wildstone Construction place a lien on Arlington High School in May of 2019? The AISD's credit is littered with slow pays to companies that completed work for AISD. Companies know this. Does our community? It isn't difficult for companies in our community to see that AISD has a pattern of not paying for work completed. It is sad to consider that after passing a $1 billion bond in 2019, we can't find good, reputable companies to do work for AISD due to the unethical practices and the unwillingness to pay companies that completed work for AISD. Our community deserves better. Our students deserve better.
So our next speaker is Ann Caffaro.
Good evening. I am Ann Caffaro, lifelong resident of Arlington, and my husband and I are both students of AISD. His mother was actually a 20-year teacher of Arlington High before she passed away. Our son is currently a student of the district as well, so you can see our roots are rooted here in this city. We know Robert Jordan personally and professionally. RJ Construction provides generous support to this school district through sponsorships at Arlington High, the billboard at UTA Stadium, and also raising thousands of dollars with you, Bowie Hogg, supporting the local FFA syndicate. But you know his reputation, you know it well, which is why you called upon him and his services in your time of need, when Sam Houston High School was flooded from the storm. He provided you unwavering commitment to help you in your time of need with his manpower, his equipment, all at his own expense, only expecting to be paid for his services as any business owner would. As a taxpayer, I expect more and better of you that spend our tax dollars and whose job is to set an example for our children. Although I'm not a small business owner, I am an HR executive of the 4th largest company in America. And there's 2 fundamental facts that I know about both people and business. And one is there's always 2 sides to every story, and everybody has their own version of their stories, and they tell their own versions. But in this case, AISD hasn't told the truth. You have said that Robert and RJ Construction refused to mediate when in fact they've requested it 3 times and you've denied him 3 times. Second, we've learned in HR, you don't ever document anything you don't want to be made public. And so we talk about what's made public. Your statement was, we can talk mediation again in 2022, 23, or 24, whenever appeals have been exhausted, and then and only if the plaintiff hasn't lost everything. It's shameful and disappointing that your position is to bankrupt a small business owner that provides local jobs to families in this room, pays taxes to the city, and helps families recover in their worst time of need. Stop wasting taxpayers' money on legal counsel whose only strategy is avoidance in hopes that people simply give up. Robert Jordan's not giving up.
Okay, the next speaker we have is Joseph Miller.
Hey, how y'all doing? Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Joseph. I used to work for Robert. That's when I kind of got into the roofing industry. I learned a lot from him. That being said, this is my first board meeting here. First one I experienced. It seems like there's kind of a little filibuster kind of thing going on. But anyways, I don't think I can say anything else that hasn't already been said. You guys signed a contract. You guys need to honor that. You need to pay for pay RJ Construction. Thank you for your time and bless y'all's heart.
Our next speaker is Brian Stokes.
Ms. Mays, and Dr. Cavazos, and board members, thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. I've been an Arlington resident for 40 years, attended elementary, junior high, and high school here, graduated from Martin High School in 1991. When my daughter turned 5 and we lived in Dallas, we moved here to Arlington so that she could go to school here. We didn't move here because of a stadium or a sports team. We moved here because of the AISD. And she ended up eventually graduating in 2017. So my wife and I made the decision to move here because of the district leadership and integrity that I experienced when I was a student here. I honestly don't know if I'd make that same decision today on what has been shared with me regarding the treatment of RJ Construction. Everyone here has a vested interest in the success of Arlington Independent School District. I devoted time, resources, and money to support this district's mission. I've even served as the PTA president at Arlington High School when my daughter, during her senior year. The AISD is important to my family, which is why this issue really pains me. Your own performance objectives state leadership, citizenship, and responsibility, none of which are being demonstrated here. You can do better, I've seen it. I'm not a legal expert, and I understand that there are probably moving parts to this issue that I'm not privy to. Your legal counsel has probably advised you to refrain from public statements, but that does not absolve you from dealing in good faith with a husband, father, former student, business owner, and supporter of our community. And apparently you've turned your back on him. At this point, why should any parent, student, teacher, or vendor trust you? The district has done a lot of great things. I've personally witnessed them and have been a part of it. What you're doing now is disgraceful, and I can tell you, you are losing public confidence the longer this is drawn out. The district asks its citizens to support them with $1.6 billion in bond approval. We stepped up. We are now asking you to do the same. Please pay RJ Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes.
Our next speaker is Lorraine Stanford.
Good evening. I
come to you now, not as a parent of an AISD student, because I've ripped both my kids from you guys. You will not indoctrinate them anymore. They now go to a charter school where this one has been behind, and their plan, unlike the one you showed, will have my son up to par within the first year. Why is it gonna take 5 years for our kids in Arlington ISD to be brought up to par when charter schools are doing it within 1 year? I think you need to re-look at what you guys are instituting here with these children. Seriously, this is a disgrace to our community, where I still pay tax dollars as a homeowner. Now, you passed out a pin to a student earlier that described, what did you say? Liberty, leadership?
No.
No. Leadership, good judgment, and represents AISD is what those pins represent, what she passed out earlier to another student. Leadership, good judgment, and what represents our community is paying a construction company that came in to our community, that has been here in our community, that pays taxes here in our community when nobody else would, and got that school up and running within a time frame that you guys asked for. You guys all agreed to pay him. Pay the man his money. Let these families have gone on long enough. All of us have dealt with quarantine, COVID. Lots of us lost our jobs. And now they have to deal with this on top of everything else. Pay the man his money. Do what's right. Do what our tax dollars are supposed to do in this community, and that is pay. Pay the man his money.
The next name I see is Claude Philippot, if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
You were close, it's still Pope.
Okay.
You were almost
Philippo.
there. You weren't the first to say Philpott.
My apologies.
Yeah, it's okay. My name is Paul Philppo, and my wife and I have been Arlington taxpayers for 23 years. Our son is a product of AISD, recently graduating in 2021. I met Robert Jordan approximately 12 years ago when our sons became friends and played sports together, starting as Hill Highlanders. When I met Robert, he was working in banking. I witnessed him give up his banking career to follow his passion for starting his own business. I saw RJ Construction grow from a one-truck, one-ladder business to the successful independently owned company it is today. As Robert's company became more established and fiscally solvent, I saw him give back to the community that supported him. I did not grow up in Arlington, but I don't know anyone in this community that loves this city and district more than Robert Jordan. Amen. He has supported this district through generous donations to multiple AISD programs such as football, baseball, ag programs, sponsorships, and numerous booster clubs. I had the opportunity to visit the job site at Sam Houston High School and bear witness to the devastation caused by the flooding. I saw the amount of equipment that was brought in to get this job done for AISD. I was there when Robert received a phone call from the district asking him for a game plan and pressing him to get kids back in schools. I saw him go classroom to classroom. That school is 600,000 square feet, assessing how to make that happen. When Robert makes a commitment to get something done, he gets it done, and this was no exception. As a taxpayer, I am disgusted by the district's opposition to settle this case. I do not understand why this district is not paying the bills for services rendered. I'm perplexed why we are not using an insurance policy tax dollars help pay for in catastrophic events. Why is this board allowing an attorney to state he will drag this case out until RJ Construction goes bankrupt? Again, a company who gives back to the district multiple times over and was willing to help the district win.
Thank you, sir.
Next thing on our agenda is our superintendent report. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Mays, and I'd like to share some information about our school district, and you'll see the slides come up here in just a second. want to congratulate Wimbish World Language Academy for being honored by the Agency of French Education. The award was given to the school for its excellent standards in French immersion program. And if you're familiar with Wimbish World Language Academy, it deals with French as a second language. The award is granted by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. With that honor given at a school-wide assembly, Wimbish is now one of 55 schools in the U.S. to receive the honor since the program was launched in 2012. Congratulations to everyone pictured there that had a lot to do with Wimbish becoming Wimbish World Language Academy, and of course all their teachers, staff, and students that attend that school. Thank you to Burlington for awarding Sherrod Elementary $5,000 for its teachers to spend on school supplies. Sherrod was selected by Burlington as it opened its new store in North Arlington. If you don't know, whenever Burlington opens a new store, it selects a school as part of its partnership with Adopt a Classroom. This isn't the first time Burlington has selected one of our schools either. When it opened the store near the Parks Mall, last year the staff at Bergen Elementary received money for supplies. Again, thank you to Burlington, a generous donation for our teachers and for supplies. If you haven't been downtown to the downtown library recently, it's worth a trip to see the MUM that was created by members of our special education department. The MUM was made to raise awareness for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And as you can tell, the effort that was put in that, it also received official notification from the Guinness Book of World Records that it's the largest homecoming MUM. If you try to wear the MUM, you'd have to stand more than 20 feet tall. Just a little fun fact. The MUM continues to be an annual tradition for our special ed team, which annually plans something around breast cancer awareness. And I just want to thank them for, again, creating that culture in our workforce and with our staff, that doing something that represents and demonstrates the love they have for something beyond themselves. And I think it's very commendable, so I thank them very much. October also marks National Principals Month. Make sure and check out our Looped In blog at AISD.net, where we highlight principals weekly during the month. Last week, it was Selena Kilgore from Pope Elementary, our longest tenured principal in the district. Today's story was on Sherrod Elementary principal, Clarita Thompson, who talked about what it's like to be a first-year principal. And that's quite an experience. We continue to make progress towards our next strategic plan, and I want to take a moment because it's really culminating with a lot of the things that we talked about tonight with goal setting, the culture of the district, the priorities that we set. We continue to make progress with our next strategic plan. We spent 2 days this week at the PDC for Design Days, and I'd like to thank everyone who participated in our focus groups, parents, students, community members, everyone who answered the survey, thousands, about the future of Arlington ISD. As you can tell from some of those pictures, some of those are the participants. We were led through 2 days of calibration, of SWOT analysis, of strategy development and things like that, really setting the path for the next 5 years. And I can't tell you that there's a lot of things happening in the school district that are exciting. This is one of the big ones because it really guides where we're going in the future. And I want to thank again everyone who participated and brought all their energy to it. This was not just an exercise, a lot of insight. So thank you, and we will continue to engage the board in different ways so that this plan eventually becomes something that you can consider adopting in December, approximately. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Do I have any school board members that have? Yes. Okay. Any school board members that have reports? Mrs. Fowler?
Thank you, President Mays. I just wanted to mention that one of our very own teachers in the district, Danny Tarrant Johnson, special ed math teacher at Bowles Junior High, gave birth to a baby boy today. And she's doing well, and baby's doing well, and grandmother Lori Treno is doing well. So we're really happy to welcome her baby into the world. Also, as a personal note, I wanted to say thank you so much to my board members and Dr. Cavazos for your support over the last couple of weeks. I appreciate your friendship and your love, and it's really meant a lot to me, so thank you.
Mrs. Fowler. Do I have any other trustees that have reports? Okay, seeing none. Mrs. Secretary, do we have any items to consider?
No, ma'am, I do not believe we do.
Okay. With that being said, it is 10:19 and this meeting is adjourned.